welcome to the 420th episode of the Random Podcast from Heck. My name is Tony. This is the podcast about random things in the world of entertainment, which includes movies, TV shows, and comic books. Big shout out to Andrew Logan. He is a big supporter of the show. You can be a supporter by going to patreon.com/gmanfromheck. Any amount you can commit to will be awesome. If you commit at the Rick Jones tier or higher, you get access to the secret podcast from Heck, which is an additional 30 minutes of podcast entertainment every single week. We are back to talking about Hobgoblin. We're getting closer and closer. We're almost at the true reveal. It's classic stuff happening. It's fun to look back. I've done some off of mind episodes last couple of weeks with random comic book topics, and I will do more. But if you can't commit to monthly commitment, you can also help out by going to coffee.com/gmanfromheck, and you can buy me a virtual cup of coffee or 3. That's ko-fi.com/gmanfromheck. Basically, it's a way to help support the show, and you get something in return. Yeah. So what is happening this week? Oh my goodness, it's another one of those weeks, but I won't get into that. I'll spare you from that, unless there's a request for the personal side, which I don't think anyone needs that. So what was happening this week? Our movie feature is The Long Walk. So this is based off a Richard Bachman novel, which is Stephen King, as you're probably aware of. And this movie, it kind of came out of nowhere. I had no idea this movie was coming out up till like maybe 2 or 3 weeks. 3 weeks, 4 weeks max before. I had no idea it was even going to be a thing. And I liked it. Let's say that. Actually, I will say this. This is one of those things. I pre-ordered the Steelbook for the 4K Blu-ray already. The sometimes movies, they'll do pre-orders like the day like the movie comes out. On Friday, the pre-orders went up for the Steelbook, and I was like, that's a pretty, I like the movie that much. I thought about it. It's like, yeah, I wouldn't mind having it. And I was like, that's a cool looking Steelbook. I'm a sucker for the Steelbooks. I actually kind of like the Steelbook art better than the actual poster art. Although I didn't get a super duper good look at the Steelbook, but I got a good enough look at it, I think. Whatever. So we're going to talk about The Long Walk. We also have an interesting Peacemaker, interesting Alien Earth. It kind of caught me off guard. At first, I'm just like, why are we doing this? So it's something a little different. We got Twisted Metal. We got Dexter Resurrection. So what does that mean? That means no Wednesday again. So I think we're kind of done. Which again, it really bothers me. I wasn't able to, because there's so much TV, so much comics, and then just with working with teaching. And this is my excuse. So I am teaching more than like regular, more than like my regular full time. I'm not just teaching math. I'm also teaching Spanish. So I'm teaching Spanish 3 different grade levels. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of, and to keep like them on their toes with the Spanish, with like the work, like the written stuff. I'm like checking that stuff because I can't just say, oh, do this and let's hope for the best. There's ways you can work around it, but it's like, by me grading it, it's pushing them because they know I'm going to check it. So there's more work, and I'm kind of beat. But we got a lot to talk about. So let's get into this because there's some interesting things. I don't know how I feel about this. Super Mario Brothers 2 movie's coming. Okay, I really like the Mario Brother characters. I like Mario, Luigi, Prince Peach, Yoshi. Like all these characters are just so colorful and cool. The Super Mario. I love the games. Obviously Mario Kart is a blast. Just everything is so cool. The movie, the graphics were great. I don't know how I feel about the voice casting. The movie did really well. It made like over $1 billion, so it's successful. And maybe kids went and saw it, everyone saw it, I don't know. So people really enjoyed it. I'm just not super crazy. That is a movie I did not buy the Steelbook for. I was tempted, but I think the one, it just never happened. Maybe someday I will. I don't really like just, it's not a super cool design The one is just the mushroom that I keep seeing because I know it's sold out and whatever, and then it gets restocked. But the main thing is, like Chris Pratt is Mario. Chris Pratt is I enjoy him as Star-Lord, but I don't know. And to be perfectly honest, as I'm about to like complain or whatever about this, I kind of don't really remember what he sounded like as Mario, and that's not a good thing because it just shows that I'm just not even thinking about the movie. And on top of that, then you got Jack Black as Bowser, which that is not how I envision necessarily Bowser talking. When Bowser starts playing the piano and singing a song about, being in love with Princess Peach, is there ever been, like this, I feel like this could be an off of mine, it's not going to be an off of mine. Has there ever been any official statement that Bowser is in love with Princess Peach? I mean, I know he keeps kidnapping her, and that's always a thing or whatever. But I just thought it was because he's kind of a jerk, and because she was a princess, and maybe it was like a power struggle thing or whatever. I didn't think he was kidnapping her because he was in love with her. So I mean, did they just make that up for the movie? I do not remember ever in all the Mario games that I played. I don't remember there ever being like this big giant whatever you want to call him, it being in love with Princess Peach. So I don't know, but they're making a sequel, and I will probably watch it, unless like something else comes out that same week. But most likely I'll watch it. The title has been revealed. I think it was a Nintendo Direct. The logos came out and everything like that. It is going to be called the Super Mario Galaxy Movie. So there was a game based off. I'm actually not really familiar. I don't think I'm familiar with it. It might have been. I'm trying to remember what it was. Was it released on the Wii? Is it like that recent? Which could be why I'm unfamiliar with it. Where basically Mario has to save not just Princess Peach, but basically like the universe from Bowser, and he's going to different planets and stuff like that. That could be cool. And if they do the slick animation and graphics and all that stuff, but yeah, we'll see. So yeah, I mean, I'll get over my whatever issues. What about Henry Cavill? Henry Cavill, Highlander, and I've mentioned this before. It's kind of like, why are they? I get why they're remaking Highlander, and it's just hard. It's the same thing when they remade The Crow. I mean, that might be a little different. I get it, but it's just it's bothersome to an extent. With Highlander, I was a big fan of the original when it came out, and I think I explained how I actually saw. I think, actually I could be wrong. I think I saw the second one before I saw the original, and it just like I was so confused. Or no, I think I did see the original at a friend's house, or like a VH, like recorded off of HBO or something like that. And when I saw the second one, I was like, wait, what? They just kind of changed things. So I mean, it's been a while, and you got this property. It's not like they can make another sequel or whatever, because where are the actors now, are they, who's still alive and all that. So okay, remake it after years, bring the it's a good property, and it could be some cool stories to be told. Just don't remake it totally the same. Try to do something a little different, but don't completely change it either. Make it different, but keep it the same. So we got Henry Cavill. I like Henry Cavill. And he can do cool things. Unfortunately, he got injured, and I don't think the full extent of what happened has been released. He was apparently injured during training, so this looks like it's going to possibly push the production back, because the production was supposed to begin in the fall, which is like right around now. But because of his injury, whatever it was, so now they're saying that the production may start like the beginning of 2026. And if that's the case, now then they're saying, well, the movie might not come out until 2027, maybe even 2028. So that's a bummer. And the main thing that I hope Henry Cavill is fine, that it's nothing serious, and he'll have a full recovery, and no lasting effects or anything like that. But the other thing, I always wonder when something like this happens, how does it affect all the like hundreds and hundreds. How many people work on a movie? All those names on a credit. Is it hundreds? Is it thousands? I don't know if it's more than that. I don't know. There's a lot of people that work on movies doing all the little things. So I hope all the people that were lined up, and I don't know if everyone's been hired at once, or if they're like, okay, we're going to start production, then we're going to. I mean, I would think they'd have to have people lined up because you don't want to be like interviewing or figuring stuff out. And I don't know if they shop out, they go to different things, because like food craft services or whatever, or ward, are they all different department? I mean, wardrobe is obviously you're going to hire them because you want. I don't know how it works. You got your location. When you got your location, you have to like lock in places. Like, okay, we're going to film here, whether it's on a set or on location. What if it's a set, they have to reserve it. Is it a studio? Someone else planning to use that space, and all the carpenters or whoever, and just all the camera, the lighting people, and just everything. So it's like, okay, we're going to work on this movie from October to February. It's like, we're shifting it back now. So if you had your dream gig like scheduled for like next February, either you got to cancel it or can't cancel this. It's like it's going to mess everything up. So that is why studios have they put insurance on a lot of people. And the rumor was, I don't know if this is true or not, but they were saying, when actually I won't mention any names, but you'll probably know who I'm talking about. There was a certain actor who was going to be like in big franchise movie, but there was some I think it was alcohol, a dependence, or whatever. I don't think it was drugs. I'm pretty sure it was alcohol. But if someone has a dependency issue, whether it's alcohol, that's a big thing. That could cause problems. Like if someone is drinking all the time and has serious issues, or even if it's doing drugs of any sort, it's like, okay, 7 a.m. start time, we need to be here, we need the lighting and all this stuff like that. And if someone doesn't show up because of whatever thing, that is going, I almost swore, that is going to mess up that day's production. So you can't have that. And even if you have like major star power, there's probably insurance. Like the studio has to have insurance, because if the person doesn't show up on time, that messes everything up. Then that's going to add another day of shooting or production or whatever. So they have to somehow. You hear sometimes where maybe some actors they're uninsurable because you can't predict what they're going to do. So. Yeah, I mean, if you're an amazing actor, that's one thing, but it only goes so far. If you're going to cost the studio, too much money, it's not worth it. So, I'm not saying that Henry Cavill was being reckless, anything like that. I have no idea. Maybe he was, but I doubt it. Superman apparently did really well. Deadline, they said something like the movie did so well for Warner Brothers. That is why Mortal Kombat 2 has been delayed. I was actually kind of looking forward to it. When I saw a Mortal Kombat 2 movie, I'm like, okay. I vaguely remember the first movie. I'm pretty sure I watched it. I might have watched it on HBO Max. And I'm just okay with Mortal Kombat. I'm not like a diehard fan. Even though I played it on my Game Gear, way back in the day, it was pretty cool. I was more into Tekken. When PlayStation 1 and that and 2 and so forth. So when I was like, oh, Mortal Kombat 2 movie, I don't care. But then when I saw, I was like, oh wait, and it actually when I saw the trailer the last few weeks, maybe a month ago, I don't remember. It was just fairly recently. I was like, this looks like it could be fun. It's kind of silly. But there's gonna be some cool moments, and it's not. It felt like it wasn't taking itself super seriously, because you got Johnny Cage. He's an actor, stuntman actor, and he's supposed to be in this tournament where people are getting their spines ripped out. He's just a regular guy. He doesn't have interdimensional powers or anything. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, this looks like it could be pretty fun and everything. But now it's delayed, so I was like, oh man. I was actually, and also, I don't know, that window, that date that it was supposed to come out, I forget when it was. I don't know if there's anything else coming out. So it's I don't know what I'm going to do for a podcast. So that's a me problem. But they're saying that because Superman did so well, and by so well, so it's made $614.4 million globally. So apparently that's really well. And because of that, it's like, well, we can push Mortal Kombat 2 to next year. So they're looking, they're talking about like mid-May and I don't understand this. They're trying to like, well, maybe this could be like our tentpole movie. But in the same report, it said that Mortal Kombat did 84.4 million globally. Which I don't know what the budget of these movies is. If it's like a $20 million budget, then yeah, 84 million is good. But 84 million compared to 614 million, that's a bit of a difference. And to put, to do an 84 million movie in May, unless it's going to be bigger, which it could be, I don't know. So Superman is why that pesky Superman. He's why Mortal Kombat got delayed. Speaking of Warner Brothers DC may be getting a new owner. Man, this company, Warner Brothers, has had so many different owners. I don't even know how this is going to affect anything. And I'm thinking, what is going to happen with my HBO Max account? So the latest is that Paramount Skydance is, I guess, the company now. They're preparing to make like a majority cash bid. Like they want to buy Warner Brothers. I don't even know what that means. Because Paramount and Warner Brothers are like two different studios. That's crazy. And the idea is like, is there going to be like monopoly or whatever, what do they call it? I just blanked on it. I don't know what's going to happen with that. Also speaking of DC, so there's a Red Hood comic that came out. And I'm going to be perfectly honest. I was so ready, or not really so ready, but I thought about it so many times about doing, like, actually, no, I take this back. I was going to say I was going to do an Off My Mind episode. I was actually going to write an article. Crazy Tony. Tony doesn't have time to write articles. But this was like over summer. When I saw, like, I think they're putting like a preview out for Red Hood in all the comics. When I saw this, I was like, oh, it's like we're reverting back, Red Hood and the guns. Because it felt like fairly recently, Jason kind of decided to give up the guns. He kind of came to terms with Batman a little bit, and he's like, okay, I don't need guns because it's such whatever. I think he's only using guns to be a big jerk to Batman as like a in your face type of thing. And then of course there's I forgot who wrote the comic, I should know, but there was something where he's like, okay, he's not really using real bullets, he's using rubber bullets. So it's going to hurt like crazy, I would assume. I don't want to know. It's just weird where you have a member of the Bat family using guns when Batman, Bruce Wayne, is so immensely against guns. It is pretty rude, pretty hardcore that Jason is like, I'm using guns. And so, it kind of felt like he was kind of coming, like he was evolving a little bit. Because, I don't feel like he should need guns. You could use other weapons and whatever, other means, your fists or your fisticuffs or whatever. But then when I saw this preview, I felt like oh, it's going back, and it's like, what is going on with Jason with Red Hood? Because I feel like it's been kind of all over, where almost like we start getting different depictions of him. So in this book, he's like heading this direction. Then all of a sudden, someone else writes, and they do this. I was like, wait, how does that fit in? I'm still trying to figure out like Two-Face. Or like even multiple people knowing that Jason Todd is Red Hood when there's got to be records that Jason Todd was taken in by Bruce Wayne. And if they know that Jason Todd is Red Hood and that he was a Robin the Joker killed, then he was living with Bruce Wayne. It's like, it's so stupid. This is why villains cannot know a hero's secret identity. There's too many links to whatever. I mean, I don't even think like the Teen Titans, the other members of the Teen Titans should know that Bruce Wayne is Batman. You're putting like so much faith, or that these they're not going to spill the beans on anything. So I don't know. I feel like we've had like just like so many different versions of Jason Todd, and it's like I don't even know where it's going. So what I was going to do is write an article. Is like and it kind of seemed not really my thing. Like I'm kind of critiquing or whatever, but whatever. My relationship with DC isn't what it used to be, so I don't care. But I've always been honest with what I thought about stuff, and I was like, does DC know what they want to do? I said that's the thing. This is part of why I'm never sure. Do they know what to do with Jason Todd? Do they know what they're doing with Jason? Something like that. But part of the reason I didn't want to do this is because this preview came out, and I wasn't overly impressed with the preview. I forget who the writer is. I didn't want it to be like, oh, I'm poo-pooing on this book and it hasn't even been released. It seems a little catty, seems a little jerky. That's not really my thing. I am not one for crapping all over something just because I don't like it. But there is one thing if you're reviewing and saying, well, in my opinion, this wasn't that great. And sometimes things are bad, and sometimes whatever. There's different things. But this new direction, maybe some people could have liked it. It just I not even remember what was in the previews, but I just remember there was something that I was just like, I'm not really looking forward to this. And I really like Jason Todd as a character. I think there's he's a very complex and there could be interesting stories told. And it was just great to see him. It looked like he was evolving. So we got this Red Hood comic. It's been canceled. The reason what happened is apparently the writer made some comments online. And it was about Charlie Kirk. So Charlie Kirk, as you may know, I'm not going to get political because I know. Charlie Kirk was shot speaking. And, there are a lot of people that like and respect Charlie Kirk. There's a lot of people that do not like and do not respect Charlie Kirk. A lot of people are like, yeah, he's got great views, and there's a lot of people are like, no, he has horrible views. So, you got all this, regardless of where you stand on this, no one should be killed for speaking. How does that? And I open up my TikTok, I start seeing like conspiracy. Like how did someone get so close? There's a distance. It must have been a sniper. It was a professional job. I don't even know. Whatever. And I am not going to go down that rabbit hole. I don't have time, and I don't really want to have the desire to. So you have all this. No one should be killed for speaking their mind, whatever, or whatever horrible or wonderful their views are. So apparently the writer for Red Hood made some comments, and DC's like, no, we can't do that. And their statement was something like, while we allow creators to have their own opinions and thoughts, whatever, creativity, blah blah blah, but they're like, comments that are promoting hostility or violence are inconsistency with our standards of conduct or something like that. So they're saying, yeah, you can be pro or con or whatever, but you can't be like, oh, you got what you deserved or this or that or because, yeah. So they're like, we can't do that. And that's the weird, separating the art from the artist or whatever is, and the same thing goes with like movies with Bryan Singer or whatever. And, because he's returned to movies, and it's like, what do you do? If someone has talent, whether they're writing or they're an artist or they're a musician or an actor, or whatever, and then they do something bad, does that mean do you throw away all your Bill Cosby comedy albums because he did some pretty despicable, deplorable things? It's weird. There, you got this enjoyment before you knew, and now that it, it doesn't change the content, but then you don't want to support the person. So it's just like, yeah, this whole thing. And what sucks about this whole Red Hood thing is, look at there was probably an artist, there was an inker, there was a colorist, you got your editors, your letterers, all these people involved with this book, and now they lost their gig. And what makes it worse, I believe there's like the second and third issues were already solicited because it's a 3 month in advance. So those books have been like canceled. They're pulling them. They are not going to release them, even though they're done. So DC is taking a loss on this. They're just going to eat it. I don't know if they've been printed yet. I've heard some discrepancies, whatever, different stuff, like how last minute it, like a script can be, or stuff can be turned in and then printed and all that. So no Red Hood book, which I don't know what they're going to do. I mean, are they going to try to get something else in motion? Find someone else to come up with a pitch? Or just like, yeah, let's move away from Jason and try to do something else. I don't know what the idea would be. It seems like it would be like, hey, does anyone else have a good idea that we can do? But then you have to make sure, I guess legally maybe, you'd want to be careful, because if anything was similar to ideas that the one had, could there be any like lawsuits for what? I don't even know how it works. But yeah, so there's that. What about Baby Groot? I think James Gunn, he might have been on, I don't know if it was Howard Stern, he was on something, and he was asked, he's like, hey, do you get any money from all the Baby Groot merchandise? And he's like, nope. And they're like, what? You don't get any piece of that? And James Gunn's like, we created Baby Groot, which, it would be like, let's see, who's the character? I'm gonna write. I'm trying to think who hasn't been done. I'm gonna write a baby Captain, not baby. I'm gonna write young Steve Rogers comic where he has no powers or anything like that. It's not like I own that. So Groot has been around, and you could say, so you have to say, James Gunn, everyone involved with the movies, they added a new life to Groot compared to what we had in the comics. There wasn't a whole lot there, and but Groot's been around for a while. So like right now, Joe Casey in Amazing Spider-Man, he's done some flashback stories of like Peter Parker, young Peter Parker, like. There's an issue where he was dressed up in like Captain America pajamas and he wanted to wear it to school. So in a sense, we got, here's, young Peter Parker. Maybe we're going to make a young Peter Parker dressed as Captain America action figure or statue or something like that and make some money in t-shirts and that. But it's still Peter Parker. So I don't know how you would look at that. And again, because Baby Groot's whole personality was created, was different than what we have seen. But you could say the same thing almost for Star-Lord. Star-Lord with Chris Pratt isn't like the Star-Lord that we had in the comics. Star-Lord in the comics was not like a stand-up comic smartass, cracking jokes left and right. It's not like, oh, we're going to make a Star-Lord action figure. James Gunn or Chris Pratt or whoever should get a piece of that. But what James Gunn did say, he's been compensated very well, especially for Guardians of the Galaxy 2 and 3. I think 3 was even better. He's like, I get like front end and back end, so he's getting like royalties or whatever, residuals and stuff like that. So he's like, I'm very well compensated. I mean, he was the writer and director, whatever, all that stuff. So, I'm sure he's got it all or whatever figured out. But he doesn't get anything from the merch. And that's... It's not right. He's like, I get the same amount like that the artists do or, creators do. You get nothing. And this is a touchy subject where it's like weird because it would be like, okay, James Gunn did all this cool stuff with Guardians of the Galaxy and it was super successful. But what if he did all the same stuff with non-characters, with like original characters, and just change their names? Because if you want to say, okay, Baby Groot has a different personality, Star-Lord has a different personality, we're going to call him something else. Star-Lord's dad isn't actually a planet and not but what if he did this like as an indie movie, like something separate, kind of like you could say like Zack Snyder did with Rebel Moon. That was supposed to be a Star Wars pitch. They're like, nah, no thanks. So he does his own movie. Now, you could look at this, and I don't know if this is a fair example or not. Zack Snyder did 2 movies came out, and there was plans for all this other stuff. Zack Snyder's a big name. You got all the Snyder Army people. Those movies did not do well. If those movies were under the Star Wars banner, and I think is what had to have been tweaked and changed or whatever, would they have been more successful? I kind of think maybe. I don't know. I mean, I wasn't a big fan. I think I saw the second one, right? I wasn't a big fan of those. But I do think that there is something where you when you are allowed to play in the big publisher's sandbox, you get all these toys, all these characters. Just having that name recognition, you have like a built-in audience. Yeah, and I almost said something that I probably shouldn't say about it, like a video game company, but... having that name attached, it's like almost like you can do whatever, and people will buy it. So if we had, Guardians of the Space Planets or something, it might not have been as popular as it is. I'm not in no way trying to diminish what James Gunn and everyone involved did, but I think there is something different, something to say about that. I don't know. What do I know? But again, I'm like good friends, or consider some, creators good friends, and I don't want to be like, well, I don't want to insult them, but you have to know. And I think Dan Slott said it at one point where, he spent so much of his time writing. He wrote a lot of Spider-Man comics. All those any Spider characters he may have created, he doesn't own them. He may now, with deals getting a little better, maybe he's getting some sort of royalty or something. And I hope it's more than just a name in the credits or something like that. But when if you are going to work for Marvel or DC or do whatever you're going to do, going in, you do not own these characters. You make up some new character, they own that character. But your character gets to play around, fight with all these other long-term existing characters, and then you may get to see your character on T-shirts, on cereal boxes, or whatever. So you'll get some compensation, but you won't get all of it. You are making it for the big corporate entity. That is the price that you pay. Versus if you have this really cool idea, you're like, I'm going to save it for myself. I'm going to do this. One, you need to fund it. You need to figure out, how am I going to pay to make this, whether it's a comic or a movie or whatever. And then, try to make a movie. I mean, movie has $10 million budget. How are you going to get $10 million? You can go to the bank, take a loan, max out your credit cards. No. You can take out like 10 million. That's not even enough. 10 million credit cards. That's not going to be enough. So yeah, it's a weird thing, but thankfully James Gunn is getting compensated, for what he did, and he knows that. Same thing with Superman. He's doing all the Superman stuff. He is not going to get, I don't think, anything from the merch and all that, but he's getting paid nicely, I would assume, to do this stuff, and he gets to play with cool characters and do cool things. I'm sure he's having fun. Enough about that. The last bit of news, which is almost kind of silly that I mentioned this. So Wednesday, if you're a fan of Wednesday Adam and all that stuff, there's apparently it's I think it's official. There is going to be a spin-off on Uncle Fester. So they're Netflix, and I think this is a smart thing to do. It's almost like it's going to be a different audience. I don't know how it will do compared to Wednesday. I feel like there's like a lot of young people that are, fans of Wednesday or fans of Jenna Ortega, something like this. A lot of young, I would dare say a lot of young girls maybe, but, maybe that's an unfair statement because I'm a fan of the Wednesday show, but I do wonder, like, maybe it's not like quite for me. I think with Uncle Fester, I don't know if you'll get the entire same audience to watch it. Maybe because it's part of the universe, and maybe they're hoping like, oh, maybe Jenna Ortega will make a cameo or something. And they would be lucky, they would be smart if they could make that happen, even if it was just like a little tiny cameo, because you want to connect that and make people come to see it, or go click on and watch it. So, but I feel like it would be like a different type of vibe, but it would be a little quirky, but I don't know. So that could be interesting to see. And it's going to be interesting to see what else is going to happen in this episode, like how long this episode is going to be. But that is the news for the week.
All right, with comic books. Let's see, there was a Gotchaman issue number 12. This was by Sam Humphries and Chris Batista, I think. And this was I feel like maybe I was kind of reading it too quickly, kind of, because this has been my problem this week is trying to catch up with comics. And there's a lot of, actually there was, I will say there wasn't a whole lot of comics, but I was just short on time and trying to read them. So I ended up kind of going a little quickly, and there were some other characters, and there were some interesting aspects of it, but I would have probably enjoyed it more if if I took the time. And that's the unfortunate thing, is I don't always have the time, and I know that that's so incredibly lame, but that's where we're at. So I'm just glad that we have this comic, and I don't know what it is about it, and yeah, I just maybe it's just a nostalgia thing, that I just remember watching the Battle of the Planets, show when I was a kid, and there's just something about it that I just find so interesting, and with the Gotchaman, there's Space Ninja Team, and what I dig about the comic is, we're seeing that there are other trainees, so it's almost like it's making this world bigger, and I don't know because I still haven't finished the Gotchaman series, so I don't think they ever touched on this before. I mean, the idea had to come from somewhere, unless it's just they created it for the comic. So we'll see. But I'm really digging this, and again, I don't know how Mad Cave Studios, whatever they did, the fact that they have Speed Racer. I mean, I'm so thankful to them. And then let's see, what else was there. There was a Thundercats comic, which I didn't read. I'm behind on that, and someday I'll get caught up. At Dynamite also, there was Space Ghost #2. So this is like season 2 or something like that, volume 2. And what I dig about this, and part of it, what it makes me realize is, I don't know if I've seen like all the Space Ghost cartoons, because there was I have like one DVD, and I was like, is this it? Because it's I think it was like the complete Space Ghost or something like that, but it's only 24 episodes. I was like, that's like nothing. And what it was is, it was actually like a different show, because there was, I forget what like the different names of the shows. And reading this comic, what I realized is, there's like, David Pepos is, I mean, he's it's great. He's like tapping into all these, I wouldn't say obscure characters, but these other, secondary characters, villains, whatever, and kind of adding more life to them, adding a deeper story. So in this issue, we get, what was her name? Eclipse Woman. And because as I'm reading this, I was like, okay, I have no idea who this is, and I love Space Ghost. So I did a quick search, and I was like, yeah, she was in an episode, and so it's kind of cool to see. And all I'll say is, this woman had there's a connection to Space Ghost's past, that he had a run-in with her, and she's kind of like, I guess you could say she's a thief, but that's putting it really lightly, whatever. So yeah, that was kind of cool. At Image, I didn't read very much. There's Red Coast #14. This was I enjoyed this, and I always find it interesting that I enjoy this comic, because I don't, as I don't like the old-timey stuff. And the fact, I think this one, let's see, when I think it was like 1814 is when this story takes place. And what I think is pretty cool about the story, there's an attack on like Washington, and I think it's the White House is like being burned and everything. And I'm going to assume that this is something that really happened. And I can appreciate, like Jeff Johns looking at key moments in history, and then, adding a little twist to it, putting Simon Pure somewhere in there, and then telling his story. And I think that's really cool. And the fact that you have that history, it almost in a way kind of gives them a very rough outline, where he can look, and it's not like that's what this entire series is about, but like, should he need to, he can say, "Oh, there's this instance or this incident, whatever," and maybe we can do something there. So it's a without giving anything away. I don't know. Yeah. So it was a good story, I thought. And then the end, it kind of, see, I don't want to say too much, but it kind of jumps to a different period. And it's like, that was weird. It almost felt like this could have been like the final issue, but there's going to be like a new story arc happening. So yeah, that was fun. Also at Image, there was a Unchosen #3. So this is a David Martinez comic, and this. So there's this girl who was kind of like rescued by these people, and there's we're seeing more of this world. It's like there's kind of like magic involved, and there's this big incident about to happen, but then she's sort of like at the school, and so you're looking at it's like where's this comic going to go? Because you almost have like these mean kids and everything like that. But then, we've been starting to see that this girl, Ada, there's something more to her. Almost like, is she the chosen one or a chosen one or something? In the first issue, we saw these other people who were trying to, I guess, grab her, take her, or something like that. And, that's who she was like rescued from. But then we see like the return of these people, and it's like, well, maybe there's a little more to them than we realize. And that's where it's like, So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where this is going to go. Because, it's almost like the sky's the limit. We have no idea what's going on here. At Marvel, we had Captain America #3. Our Secret Wars Part 3, and this is I'm intrigued with this. So this is Chip Zdarsky and Valerio Schiti. So we got good art, and it's looking at Captain America like when he shortly after he was thawed out of the ice, and he wasn't really sure what he wanted to do, where he was going to go, and he went back to the army for a bit. So he's on this mission, and there's this other dude who kind of took on the mantle of Captain America, like before he came out. So coincidentally, whatever. And they're on this mission. They go to Latveria. So we actually have, I don't want to say young Captain America, but like early. Well, see, it's not even early, but basically Captain America without a lot of the modern experience going up against Doctor Doom. And yeah, that's all I'll say. And it's kind of funny that we have that because of all the one world under Doom, all this Emperor Doom, whatever. And here we have Doctor Doom, but it's almost like it's a different story type of thing. So I can appreciate this a lot more than all this other Doctor Doom stuff. We have Eddie Brock, Carnage, and one thing that bothers me a little bit. So we have this Venom story here, and then Venom popped up in Thunderbolts or New Avengers, whatever, and it's like where did they fit in? We also have Muse here, and I could have sworn he was dead. And maybe at the end of that Elektra, Daredevil Elektra series, maybe he came to life and I just missed it or forgot it. I don't know. So Eddie Brock he dreamed of this woman. So he's like, I need to go find her, and it has something to do like with his when he was like the King in Black, and being able to be in contact with all symbiotes. So he's like, this woman has a symbiote, so he needs I forgot where it was, like it was in Washington or somewhere. And meanwhile, Muse has a taste for he wants to find Eddie Brock for whatever reasons. And I just don't care about Muse. I mean, I know there's like the potential and everything like that, but it's like I just really don't care. We have an Edge of Venomverse #1, so I did not even, no way I'm going to look at that. Exceptional X-Men #13. This was a little weird. So we had this like crossover with Riri Williams, and there was like this kind of like portal thing, and Kitty Pryde ended up going into her past. So she's in Deerfield, Illinois, and then she just has to be careful because she can't interact, with her younger self or anything like that. So the other, oh, and like Emma can't go because Emma's gonna meet Kitty Pryde soon. So what do? They send these kids that I don't care about, and then like Kitty's, I guess some things were changed. So it's like, are we gonna see any like repercussions? Because while they're trying to find Kitty or whatever, there's like a little sentinel attack, and that didn't happen before. So it's like, what does that mean? So I don't know. And then there's a Helverine. Every time I've not read a single Helverine comic, but every time I look at the cover, I almost feel like a lot of the covers, they're not the same, but I feel like they're very similar. And maybe because there's just like fire everywhere. But it's like, I need to go back and read the first one because I do not understand. And again, if this is Daken, how did this happen? How is his head on fire and his claws on fire? I have no idea. And I feel like it's just a spoof, but it's not. I have no idea. And the fact that if this happened, is he being tormented? Is he being, why is he on fire? And the main thing is, why has Wolverine or Laura, like, there's been no one, neither of them have mentioned anything. More Imperial War, Nova Centurion. And I don't know how I'm feeling about this. This issue is Jed MacKay and Jonathan Hickman. So, two great writers. And I'm a big fan of Nova, so of course I'm going to read this. But the overall story, and now that we like know what's happening, because here there's still some questions like, well, who's behind all this? Who's doing this? And this issue is mainly dealing with Richard Rider trying to connect to like the Centurion, the world mind, whatever thing. And there's things that aren't going to go as smoothly as he may want, and part of it has to do with his time in the Cancerverse. So we'll see where that's going to go. But I think my problem is just all this. I don't know what it is about Cosmic Marvel stuff. I always kind of struggle to read it, to enjoy it, even though I really like, a lot of the characters here. And I think the other thing also is, we kind of have this like event here and, all these Imperial stuff, but we also have like the Doctor Doom event, and, we're about to head into an X-Men event. There's so much stuff happening, like major things, but they're not connected. It kind of feels like overload, and I get why we have so many crossovers, but I think back to like, there was a time where we hardly had any crossovers, and each series, each character was like mainly in their own book, but now it's like constant crossovers, and here we're getting multiple crossovers happening at the same time, so it's just a little annoying. One World Under Doom #7, and oh my gosh, this feels like it's been going on forever. And this issue, it almost feels like as things are going, we got this big battle. It's Doctor Doom versus everyone, and it's like, wow, things are really heating up. We must be getting close to the end. But then as you're reading, it's like, okay, it's got to be ending that next month, right? No, because when you read like on the last page, when it's talking about issue 8, because I was like, okay, an 8-issue series, eight is a good number, but for the description of issue 8, because I was like looking for, is it going to say final issue, things wrap up, or anything like that? Nope, it's saying the penultimate issue, so that means this is a 9-issue series, but it feels like way more than that because of like the Fantastic Four comics, just like other tie-in stuff. So we get Reed Richards fighting Doctor Doom, and it's actually kind of interesting, like what Reed does, and because Reed's weakness has always been kind of magic, because he, as a scientist, he has a hard time buying into it, like accepting the fact that magic exists without science. And they're looking at, it's like, how can they fight Doctor Doom? They got to mix things up, and so there's some cool things here. We'll see where it's going to go. Okay, then we have a new Punisher series, and when I saw this, I was like, oh, I'm not the biggest Punisher fan, and the reason is it's hard for me to buy into a guy who's just going to go around and murder people, judge, jury, execution, or whatever. He is killing scum. He's killing drug dealers or gangbangers or just whatever, a lot of bad guys. But still, it's like it's not his duty to just murder people. And sometimes the story is just it gets a little repetitive or whatever. It's like, okay, he's gonna kill this person, whatever. After the last Punisher series, where he was like, it was weird. But I was hooked. I was curious, where he was like the leader of the Hand, and then there's like all this. There's like some mystical, magical, whatever stuff happening, and it was just like this. That's crazy. And the fact that his dead wife was brought back to life, and that was just like wrong. And then that ended, and it's like, well, wait, where's Punisher now? He's like in comic book limbo. It's like, is he alive still, or like what's happening? So now we have this, and then they also like, which wasn't great. They redid, or they gave Punisher like a new logo, because like all the people who are using the Punisher logo, which is weird, like law enforcement people, and it's whatever. So now here we got Punisher, but then something has happened. We're coming in a little late. He's doesn't like have full control, or he doesn't like have all his memories. Like he doesn't even know what his name is. And then what's kind of interesting is you also see like Kingpin in here. And I'm not fully, I don't know, because like in recent Daredevil comics, Daredevil kind of, basically Kingpin kind of saw the light, or found the light, or whatever. And, not that he repented or something like that, but he became like very, I wouldn't say religious or whatever, but it's like, wait, what happened to him? And so with him here, it's like, are we going to get a continuation of, where he went? Because I forget if like Elektra was in search of him to just prepare for whatever he's going to do next. So now that he's here, at first I was like, well, maybe they are continuing, but then I was like, I don't know if they are or not. I don't know if he's back to his old ways, or if he is trying to do the right thing. So we have like that aspect of it, but then there's more happening. Yeah, and what happens at the end, I don't want to get into. It's like, it's crazy, and so I dig this, and even like the last series, with the Hand, I was a fan. As I said, I wasn't a big Punisher fan. I was a fan of Rick Remender's run on this, and including Frankencastle stuff. So I think it's good to mix things up, and even though that was such a bizarre story, and the last him leading the hand was weird, you got to do it, otherwise it's not interesting. It's just Punisher killing people. So what happens at the end here, I'm not super crazy about it. It is kind of interesting. It's like, okay, now what's going to happen, so I don't love it, but I'm also really curious. There's Red Hulk number 8, and man, I've like lost interest in this. I'm still like skimming this comic, even though I kind of I'm not enjoying it, and it's weird because I was a fan of Red Hulk, like Jeff Johns' run on it, and when we didn't know who Red Hulk was, but now it's just, yeah, I'm just struggling, and the fact that there's some Doctor Doom stuff, that just like makes it worse. Let's see, there was a Superior Avengers, interesting cover. I didn't read that issue. There was a Spider-Verse versus Venomverse number 5. I'm not reading that. The Undead Iron Fist number 1. Danny Rand returns to save the Iron Fist legacy. So with this, when did Danny Rand die? How did I miss that? What happened? I'm assuming it's something that has happened. But so the idea is here, because on the cover, Danny Rand returns to save the Iron Fist legacy. So he comes back from the dead. Because it actually starts off with like Luke Cage going to his grave, and he's feeling bad that he hasn't, he's been so busy that he hasn't gone to visit his grave. But somehow Danny Rand is back, and going to work on some stuff. We see it wasn't like an easy journey for him to escape hell or wherever he was, but now he's back, and the problem I have is, one, the fact that he died. I don't remember that or didn't catch it, but there is I'll whether this might be a spoiler, but not really. Maybe is he's kind of limited in his powers because he is doing this on his own. So he's kind of limited on his powers, and it reminds me a little bit of like early days of Spawn, where he has like a set amount of juice or whatever, and if he abuses it, he's going to use up a big portion of his powers. So like here, actually, I think that's enough. So I don't know. It'll be. I don't know, like where Danny Rand is now that he's, in the world, and yeah. So I don't know. I mean, we've had some good Iron Fist stories, yeah, and it's weird that he hasn't really been around lately, but I guess there's just a reason for that. There's Ultimate Spider-Man Incursion. I'm going to be totally honest. When I was reading this, or skimming, because I don't really like the other, I don't really like this story so much, I was like so tired, and I must have, I don't know if I like nodded off for a second, because then I'm reading this, and I'm like, wait, what am I even reading? Because you see like Ileana, and she looks like regular outfit that she would wear in the regular Marvel universe, and I'm like, what's happening? And then it's like, oh, Miles Morales. So I don't know, and it's still, this whole comic is about Miles trying to get his sister, and it's just kind of silly. I don't know. Ultimate Wolverine. I have no idea what's going on in that, and I guess I never will. Wolverine's and Deadpool's issue 3. It feels like we've had more than 3 issues, and I was going to read this, but one, a short in time, and two, well, I enjoyed the first issue. The second issue, not so much, and I just feel like it's just more of like Wolverine and Deadpool, nonsense stuff. The fact that was it the Shadow King? I don't know if that's continuing. I don't know. I don't know if that story resolved, but yeah, I didn't read that. And then the last Marvel one is there's an X-Men Age of Apocalypse comic, and Jeff Loeb is writing it. So I was like, cool. And we have art by Simone de Mayo. So we got really good art. It looks cool. The characters are almost like I mean I think I'm trying to remember if Joe Maduro was around this time, but it's not quite his style, but it's almost like how it has like a distinct feel to it. So I started reading it, and it's like, wait, it's like, oh, we got Blink, cool, and there's Sabretooth, and other characters pop up, obviously, but shortly when I got into it, I was just like, I just really don't care about these characters, and I was never like a big Age of Apocalypse fan, and I feel like I've just recently talked about this, and part of it was because it interrupted all the X-Men comics. Was it 4 weeks? I feel like there were 4. We had all these different series. Series took different names, and they were all like 4 issues. And that's kind of like what's going to happen now in the comics, where all the regular books are, I guess, getting put on pause, and they're going to be renamed something. So I don't know. I probably what I will do is go back and read this, because if this is like carrying over, even if it's just how many issues was this? I don't know if yeah, but I feel like I should read this, because there's probably going to be some important stuff here, maybe. At DC Comics, there was Ultimate Batman number 12. I started reading this. I'm confused, because issue 11, and I don't know if I should spoil. I even though it was a month now or less, but we have all this stuff going on with Bane. So Absolute Universe Bane is like hardcore. And what happened last issue, he defeated Bruce, basically. He defeated Batman, and he delivers a pretty nasty injury on Batman. And when you see, like, after he just basically demolishes him, I was just like, holy crap. It's like, how is Batman, how is Bruce going to walk away from this? How are they going to explain this? Well, I don't know how they did, because when we see him in issue 12, he's back in Gotham, and they're like, you've been gone 20 days. And it feels like it would have been more than 20 days just to recover. But he's been given like an enhancement on top of being repaired. So I right before I was recording, I went back and I looked at issue 11. I was like, did it, after, because I had read this issue, I was like, did I miss something? Did that not really happen? Did that happen to someone else? But it's like, no, it happened to Bruce. The other thing that's going on here, mainly, because since there's no mention of what Bane did, is, so one thing that's kind of bothered me is how Bruce is like friends with his rogues gallery. and because they're not villains, they're just like regular people. And there's I'm just blanking on the first person I was going to say, but we have Killer Croc, we have Harvey Dent, we have Riddler. I feel like there's more, but basically all these villains. And what bothered me, what I was saying, is they became aware that Bruce is Batman. He's like, oh, they're good friends of his, so he lets them know. And what happens here, what Bane decides to do, is to kind of amplify them. So Bane here, he basically becomes all the villains' origin story. And are they going to be villains? They're friends with Bruce, but it all happens. Pretty much most of this, it happened off panel. Bruce is gone for 20 days, and he's like, "Oh, where's Harvey at?" They're like, "Haven't you heard?" Or then they're like, "Oswald, like, wait, you don't know what happened?" So yeah, it was just, it's like, why is this happening so fast? And why is it happening 12 issues into the series? Action Comics, I think it was 1080 or something like that. This is continuing like the Superboy flashback stories, and there's some fun stuff here. It's like Clark has a crush on Lana. He's spending time learning like his abilities. Being Superboy, and then there's this, what's his name, Comet Man, and he has some hidden ulterior motive. So it's kind of fun. I'm enjoying it. I think I'm enjoying it more than like the regular Superman, like the current day Superman stuff. Batman and Robin, I can't read. What, issue 25? This is supposed to be a new story arc, and again, because this was towards the end, like I just ran out of time. And so I just started skimming. I was like, I have no idea what's going on. I feel like there was a lot of like text in this issue. And and I was like reading it like late. And, my eyes were a little drowsy. But I was like, maybe I'm not going to read this. I got to start at some point. There was another Superman, the Kryptonian, or not Kryptonian, the Kryptonite Spectrum. So I didn't read all of the first issue just because it was like a supersized issue, and it's like, out of continuity, but maybe I should go back and try to read that. We had Green Lantern Corps number 8, and I'm just, it's weird because we have the Green Lantern Corps is like, we need to bring the other emotions back, the other rings, and just all this stuff. So you see them, and then we got that, what's his name, Nathan dude, and we get this big battle, which kind of sounds cool, but yeah, I don't know. There's something just. I feel like I should be like, wow, this is cool. There's a lot happening, but I'm just, I can't. I'm not getting into it fully. So I don't know. And then I think that's kind of all I read. There's Supergirl number 5. I do want to read this, but I was like, I don't have time because there's like super pets are here. There's a lot of them. There's another Batman by Gaslight, Aquaman, I think issue 9. There's a Trinity, daughter of Wonder Woman. So I started reading this because I've been enjoying this for the most part. We have the time displaced Trinity, and as I was reading this, and it almost started getting a little too silly, and I'm trying to also figure out like, where is this happening? Because we have a young Trinity, and she's wearing a Robin costume with like a tutu, And then I was like, wait, why is Alfred alive? It's like, what? Because I didn't realize she was still stuck in time or whatever. I was like, so Alfred does come back? No. And then, she's got the Robin Corgi that she's like trying to chase, and Bruce is getting married. So I was like, wait, when is this taking? I don't know. So I ended up not reading and then it was kind of getting a little goofy. So yeah. And then there's a Fire and Ice issue. Then Court Children of the Round Table, and this is by Tom Taylor and Danielle Di Niculo. So I didn't read this. I got a couple of pages in, and the reason I stopped is I was like, I need to like actually read this, because this is a first issue, got a lot of characters, it's a new world, and I'm really curious about this because it's sort of like obviously like Arthur, King Arthur, all that stuff, Knights of the Round Table, but they're kids and it's in a DC universe, because Tom Taylor has done some other stuff outside of DC, and he's had some successful like kids like book and series or what animated show, but this, it's like there's no connection. It's like this doesn't need to be a DC comic as far as what little I've read. And it doesn't feel like oh, it's in Metropolis or Gotham. It's so there's like really no connection. And maybe it's just, hey, Tom Taylor, you got an exclusive contract. I think I don't know if he is. So like, what do you want to do? Let's do your pitch story. I don't know. But it does look interesting, even though I'm not an old-timey fan, but it's not old-timey necessarily. So I just want to like actually give this time to read, and not just try to like skim through it just to do it. So you should probably check that out, and you should check out the rest of the show, but that is going to be comic books for the week.
All right, Dexter Resurrection, season 1, episode 9, Touched by an Angel. And I feel like such a dope that I didn't get the meaning of that title. So episode 9, there's 10 episodes of seasons. That means this is the penultimate episode. And holy crap. Oh man, this is like, I feel like so much happened this episode. It's like almost like a roller coaster ride. It just goes, and you're just like, oh no. And then it's like, oh crap. Oh, it just keeps going. And there's like, oh yeah, awesome, this is great. And then it's like, no. All right, so it starts off, last time in episode 8, Dexter's in a restaurant with Harrison, and then, hello, Red, you didn't tell me you had a son. Friggin' Prater comes in, and it's just like, okay, this is awkward because Harrison Harrison knows a little, obviously, but he doesn't know about all this red stuff. Prater walks in, and he's like, I didn't know he had a son. And then Dexter thinks, he's like, no matter how hard I try to keep my life separate from my darker needs, the two keep on colliding. So Prater he turns to Harrison, he introduces himself, and Harrison's like, yeah, I know. It's like, how do you two know each other? And then it's like, Prater is like, your car is like, isn't that right, Red? Which, why would Prater, who has drivers, why would he be in a rideshare vehicle? So Dexter is like, yeah, I gave him a ride and we kind of hit it off. And then Harrison's like, that's crazy. He's like, I've watched every one of your TED Talks. I especially love the one about investing your life in the things that you love, not the things that you need. And Dexter thinks, he's like, the story of Prater's life. And Prater's like, that simple epiphany changed who I am. But Red didn't say he had a son in town. What do you do? Are you in school? And this is where it's dangerous territory, because Dexter, he can't, unless he like tries kicking Harrison under the table, Harrison has no idea that there's this lie going on. Harrison's like, no. He's like, I got a day job at the Empire Hotel, just a bellhop. But it's like, oh crap. He told Prater knows where he works. He's gonna like be able to figure things out, right? Maybe not. He's like, but I'm actually planning on. And then Dexter cuts him off. He's like, yeah. He's got big dreams. This kid. He's like, hey Leon, mind if we have a word outside? And he's like, of course, Red. But let's make sure you and I didn't get your name. And so Dexter almost got out, and Harrison's like, Harrison. And Prater's like, Harrison. So, to make sure he remembers it. And Dexter thinks, another step closer to the truth about who I really am. So, okay, Prater knows where Harrison works. He knows his name is Harrison. So then Prater's like, you guys should come over to my place after this gala is behind me, and we can get to know each other. And Harrison's like, I would love that. And he's like, great. They step outside, and then, like, is Charlie taking pictures? Because it seems weird, because Dexter sees her standing by the car, but she doesn't have her phone out. She does have, like, one hand in a jacket pocket. So it's like, did she take the pictures and then stick her hand away? That seems weird. But then I was thinking, I was like, what if I was like, maybe it's Batista. Then I was like, no, probably not. So Dexter thinks, he's like, I prefer it when my nemesis doesn't have a henchman. Or is it hench person? And then, so he says to Prater's like, you're having me followed now? And Prater's like, now Red, I do not like surprises. By the time someone has been invited into my inner circle, I usually know all about them. But you are full of surprises. And Dexter thinks, oh, you have no idea. So Prater's like, you quit your IT job. You moved from your apartment without informing me. Now I find out you have a son. But it's like, maybe he's a stepson. Maybe it's a family friend who he thinks is a son. Just because you're with a kid doesn't automatically mean it's your son. I mean, yeah, it can be a little creepy, but it could be a family friend. It could be a nephew or whatever. And Dexter's like, you fudging stay away from my son. And Prater chuckles. He's like, whoa, ho, ho. It's like, of course. Wow. I would never get between a father and a son. But I have to ask you, does Harrison know who you really are? And Dexter's like, what do you think? And Prater's like, I'm not sure about anything with you, Red, but you have my word. I will not blow your cover with Harrison. Honestly, it's Charlie who is a bit concerned. She has this bug up her butt that you were the reason why things have gone wrong lately. So Dexter like scoffs. He's like, you think I'm that stupid? If I wanted to mess with your little gathering, you never would have seen me coming. And then he motions his face because of the hoodie. So it's like, you never would have seen him coming. Prater's like, I understand, but you have to learn to trust me, Red. And Dexter's like, Prater's like, I've shared more of my personal history with you than I have with anyone, serial killer or not. You just have this way about you that's unlike the others, yet you live in a shroud of secrecy. I would like to schedule a time for us to get together. I want you to tell me about your personal history. I want to know about your childhood, your parents, why you do what you do. Call me curious, and if you open up to me, maybe I won't feel the need to have you followed. Will I? Dexter's like, okay, but again, my son is off the limit. And he's like, trust. And he puts his finger on Prater's chest. Goes both ways. Prater's like, you don't know how happy you've made me, Red. You're part of my world now. He gets into a car on his side of the street, so he's not being driven by Charlie. Charlie's across the street just watching him. So he's like, you're part of my world. Dexter's like, part of his world? BS. I'm not part of his world, and neither is my son. And then Charlie gives a little wave across the street. Dexter just goes back inside. Harrison immediately goes on. He's like, oh, you didn't tell me you know Leon Prater? And he's like, and he's got a nickname for you, Red? Dexter's like, come on, we're leaving. And Harrison's like, but we're not finished. So Dexter, after waits for her, she's like, can I get the bill? And she's like, oh, Mr. Prater already paid for it. He paid for a bottle of dessert wine, too. And then she's like, it's very expensive. Dexter's like, don't want it. And Harrison's confused. Dexter's like, you have to trust me. So they go like downstairs, like through the kitchen and out the back. And Harrison's, this is where it's getting annoying. It's like, come on, Harrison. You are not an idiot. He's not an idiot. But geez, sometimes the way he asks, he's like, why are you acting like this? Is this about Leon Prater? Did he threaten you? And then it's weird because there's like this, every once in a while shows do this, there's like this camera angle that makes it look like someone's watching them. So is it just stylized directing, or, I mean, someone did take pictures. Was it Charlie? Is it someone else? So Harrison's like, seriously, what the fudge is going on? You promised no more secrets. But it's like, Harrison, did you tell Dexter that you slept with the college tour guide? So you're keeping secrets, right? That's just different? Dexter's like, Prater isn't what he seems to be. And Harrison's like, what are you talking about? Geez Louise, what do you think? It's like, come on. So Dexter's like, and he like, they're walking down the street, and he's like, Prater has this type of club for serial killers. And Harrison's like, what? He's a serial killer? Dexter's like, no, he collects them. And he's like, what? So he collected you? Dexter's like, not me. Dexter Morgan. He thinks I'm Red Schmidt, the serial killer the news called the Dark Passenger. And Harrison's like, that's why he calls you Red? Why the fudge he thinks you're Red? It's like, come on. And Dexter's like, because I found him, Red Schmidt, when he was killing drivers in the city. And Harrison's like, that's why you've been ride-sharing? Because it's easier to hunt him? And Dexter's like, Red heard a friend of Blessings who showed me a video of his near-death experience. And then and Harrison's like, did what you do? And Dexter's like, and afterwards, I found an invitation in Red's backpack from Prater for like-minded individuals. And so I impersonated Red to infiltrate the group. Harrison's like, that's how you found Lady Vengeance? She was part of the group? And Dexter's like, yeah. Okay, so you've been like hanging out with other serial killers? Like who? Did you do what you do with any of them? Dexter's like, I took care of some of them. And he's like who? Dexter's like, one of them calls himself the Tattoo Collector. Another who was called the Gemini Killer. And Harrison's like, the Gemini? He's been killing people for years. And you took care of him? Dexter's like, them. Twins. Then there's a shot from across the street. So at this point, it's like right at that, I was like, don't tell me that they're actually triplets. It's like, is there a third Gemini? And even though they're called the Gemini twins, maybe they're going to be like so ironic or whatever that there's really three of them? No way. Dexter and Harrison go down the subway, and then, here we are. We see friggin' Batista coming up behind him, he like crosses the street, and he goes down the stairs to the subway too. So it must have been Batista taking pictures. Not a third Gemini dude. Not Gareth part 3. So Harris like in the subway, he's like, wait, is this like what happened with Mom? You got too close to the Trinity Killer and he murdered her? He could have killed me. And Dexter's like, hey, you are safe. This will all be over soon, I promise. Prater and Charlie are only concerned with me. And then, but Batista, because he's stopping, he like kind of goes in front of, Dexter goes in front of Harrison, so you can see the stairs coming down. I was like, if Batista goes down that stairs, Dexter's got like line whatever, he's going to see him. But Batista's smart, he hangs back at the top of the stairs, so Dexter doesn't see him, unfortunately. So they get in a subway train. Dexter's like, you have to trust me. I've got this. I've got you. I'm going to head out in case someone is following me. And Harrison's like, are we going to be okay? He's like, yes. He's like, get to work. I'll be in touch. So then Batista's like in the next train car over the next door. I think the same train, but the next doorway. And then Dexter darts out right before the door closes. Batista goes to move after him, but he doesn't make it out. He curses. He's like, fudge. And this little girl and her mom like looks at him. And New York City, right? The mom's like, watch your fudging mouth, a-hole. There's kids here. And he just like looks at, he kind of like hangs back, and then he looks at his phone. So this is where we get confirmation that he was the one that took pictures of Dexter and Prater outside the restaurant. But it's like, how did Charlie not notice him? I mean, she's just, I guess, looking at the door because the angles, he was kind of close. He was a little bit on an angle, but I don't see how Charlie didn't see him. So he looks at Prater and he's like, who the hell are you? So then Lance, Harrison's co-worker guy, he, because at their work locker, he asks Harrison, he's like, hey, do you want to make $45 an hour waiting? And Harrison's like, abso-fudging-lutely, or something like that. And he's like, where? And Lance is like, at that Leon Prater guy's mansion. And then Harrison's like, actually, I just remember I can't make it. And he's like, yo, are you crazy? It's going to be a 12-hour day. Plus you get to cruise around that Prater mansion. Harrison's like, you do that. And he's like, okay, let me know, bro. Then Stefan walks in, and he's like, he kind of gets like right in Harrison's face. And he's like, Harrison, I've been looking all over for you. There's room service requests for you. And Harrison's like, for me? He's like, 1023. So Harrison takes like a food cart up, knocks on the door. It's friggin' Charlie. So like that was fast. She's like, she booked a room. I don't know how much time has gone by. So she tells him to put the food on the table, and she like checks. She looks outside the hall, make sure there's no one there. She locks the door. So then we see Dexter. So some time must go by because Dexter's cooking a steak at his place. It's like maybe because he didn't eat at the restaurant, whatever. His phone rings. It's Harrison up on a rooftop balcony, and he's like, "Hey, Dad, Charlie came by work today. Obviously, time has passed." And Dexter's like what? He's like, "Are you okay?" And Harrison's like, "Yeah, no, I'm okay. I'm just shook up." And Dexter's like, "Tell me exactly what happened." He's like, I got a room service request. It was a late breakfast order. I brought it to Charlie's room. He's like, wait, you were alone with her? And then it cuts to like a flashback in the room. She's like, you're Harrison, right? And he's like, yeah. She's like, I was wondering, why isn't your last name Schmidt? And Harrison's like, what? She's like, well, why don't you have the same last name as your dad, Red? Why Morgan? So then it cuts back to the phone conversation. Dexter's like, she knows you're Harrison Morgan? He's like, yep. So Dexter thinks, one step away from Dexter Morgan. So he's like, how'd you explain the different last name? And Harrison's like, I kind of told her the truth. So then cuts back to the flashback, whatever, in the room. He's like, what does it matter to you? And she's like, well, when my boss, Leon Prater, invites someone to his home, I vet them. And she takes, pulls out a gun, and she sets it on the table. She's like, this is me vetting. And he's like, you use a deluxe hotel suite to vet people? One of the perks of working for a billionaire. And then she points to the food for him to like lift the silver cover thing. And she's like, yum. He's like, look, sorry, I got to get back to work. And she's like, oh, no. No, you don't. I talked to your boss, Stefan. He said you could stay with me for the rest of your shift if I need it. Sit. Which is weird because like, what is Stefan thinking? Like, is this like a house call, like room service? Like what kind of room service is are they talking here? She's like, now, why is your last name Morgan? He's like, I took my mom's last name, Hannah Morgan. Red ditched us when I was like 5, never even a visit. I didn't know where he lived until I tracked him down here in New York. She's like, tracked him down? Red's a private guy. You must be very resourceful. And he's like, he wrote my mom a letter postmarked from New York. So then back to the phone call, Dexter's like, then what? Harrison's like, then she asked when you abandoned me. And Dexter's like, hey, I won't ever abandon you again. And Harrison's like, I hear you, but the life you live, it's not entirely your decision, is it? And Dexter's like, so what'd you tell Charlie about me ditching you? Flashback to the room. He's like, I grew up outside Chicago. My mom moved around a lot after Dad left. Always had this, empty spot when it came to him. I needed to find out who he is, help, figure out who I am. Pretty disappointing to find out that he's a middle-aged rideshare driver. And she laughs. She practically like cackles. So then he's like, why'd she laugh? Dexter's like, the irony of the dark passenger being a rideshare driver, I guess. And he's like, oh, she didn't know that. And Dexter's like, nope. He's like, fudge. Sorry, I'm blowing your cover. Dexter's like, it's okay. How did it all end? Harrison's like, she thanked me for my candor and asked for my number. He's like, your number? He's like, yeah, so she could let me know when Prater could meet. I tried to tell her no, but he's like, she's pretty persuasive. He's like, yeah, she's fudging scary is what she is. She tipped me a 50 and I got the hell out of there. He's like, did you take everything with you? And Harrison's like, what, like the breakfast setup? And Dexter's like, yes. He's like, no, she was still eating. I took the cart. Is that a problem? She just kept me asking all these questions, I know I kind of told her the truth. And Dexter's like, no, you did good. That was smart. The right amount of truth helps sell a good lie. It'd be better if you came to stay with me for a few days, which I thought he already was because he couldn't, the hotel's booked. And Dexter's like, they don't know where I live. And he thinks, yet. But it's like she could follow Harrison easily. And Harrison's like, you think I'm in danger? And Dexter's like, no. But it'd be better for both of us if you stayed with me until I get a handle on all this. When do you get off work? And he's like, 8. He's like, great. I'll call you a little later with what to do next. He's like, okay. So then Dexter knocks and enters Blessings. He's like, what do you want? Dexter's like, I need to ask a favor. I mean, I'll pay, but it's still a favor. A favor? After you blew up my life with your blabber mouth? And Dexter's like, look, normally I'm the guy who can keep a secret. I should have kept your history in confidence. That's my bad. I think the combination of caring about you and Joy's relationship and getting stuck with her needles loosened my tongue a bit. It was a mistake. But it's like, how would he know? He just assumed. Like, why wouldn't she know? But Blessing just like shakes his head, and then he puts his hands on Dexter's shoulder, and then he hugs him. I'm so sorry, my friend. I forgive you. So, what is this favor you need from me? He's like, can you pick up Harrison from work tonight? He's gotten himself into a little bit of trouble. Say no more. I'll treat Harrison like he was my own family. Later, Dexter talks to Harrison on the phone. He's like, you remember Blessing? He's like, yeah. He's like, he'll pick you up after work, take you straight to my place. He's like, okay. And then Dexter's like, but first, can you look into some hotel records for me? So then we see Dexter, he breaks into Charlie's place. There's a bunch of pictures, like her in like a uniform, like a medal on display. He's like, Charlie served her country, as did her mother before her. She was a hero once. Now she plays mind games with my son for a rich a-hole. Then he sees a glass from the hotel on a counter. There's like green powder on there, and Harry appears. He's like, that witch lifted prints from Harrison. This is clearly a violation of your GD deal with Prater. And Dexter's like, Harrison's never been arrested. He doesn't have a driver's license, and he spent most of his life in Argentina. Whatever prints she lifted will lead to a dead end. Harrison's like, she's fudging with your son. And Dexter goes upstairs. He sees a chairlift like on the stairs, and he thinks, he's like, did that come with the house? Or does Charlie have an aversion to stairs? So he goes upstairs too, and then there's a beep, beep, beep. So he looks down like in this room. There's like a hospital bed and a nurse. Charlie's mother? She's taking care of her mother. He goes back down. Harry's like, you can't go soft on her just because her mother's in bad shape. And Dexter whispers, he's like, oh, I'm not going soft on Charlie. So Charlie goes, she buys some flowers. The lady's like, oh, your mama liked these, so she must do it often. She gets back in their car. Dexter's in the back seat, puts his neck saw thing around her, and then she like reaches for a gun. He's like, go ahead, take it out, put it on the passenger side floor. Point that pistol anywhere near me, and I saw your fudging head off. She kind of pauses, and he pulls a little tighter, and she's like, what do you want? He's like, I want you to drive. So she starts driving. He's like, I visited your home today, and she kind of glances in the mirror, saw your mother, saw the pictures of the two of you. You both served your country. You were even awarded a Silver Star while in Delta Force. So, I mean, this is nice that he's giving her, like, he's proving that he was actually there. So her face is like super concerned now. And he's like, special ops? How'd you go from being a hero to committing crimes for Prater? And she doesn't say anything. So he yanks, and she like chokes. He's like, answer. And she's like panting. She's like, I served all over the world, and I worked a few private security details, which led me to Prater. My mother got ill. He found out about her, helped with doctors and specialists, bought her 8 more years so far. And Dexter's like, but there was a cost. She's like, hunting down serial killers like you to join his sick fudge club. And then she's like, is she okay? Did you kill my mom? And Dexter's like, that feeling you have, the fear in the pit of your belly. And then he like darts forward, he gets like right in her ear. That's exactly how I felt when my son told me about your visit. The gun on the table. She's like, did you kill my mom? He's like, you're asking if I looped this very, I forget, it's like jiggly or whatever, jiggly saw, something like that. If I wrap this very saw around her neck and then like whispers, he's like, cut her head off. He's like, no, that's not who I am. And from the metal, I know you're not the type of person who frames innocent kids. And yet you chose to scare my son, to threaten him. She's like, do you think I do anything that's not a direct order from Prater? that I can say no to the man who's keeping my mom alive? He told me what to do, specifically. Book the hotel, get Harrison alone, everything down to the gun on the table. Mr. Prater exploits everyone's weakness. Mine is my mother. Yours is clearly your son. And then Dexter kind of sits back and he thinks, Prater broke the promise. He's the one who needs to be taken out. And he's like, pull over. And he's like, leave my son alone, or I'll pay your mother another visit. He grabs this, takes the saw, and he leaves. And she has like blood on her neck. And she puts her gun away and she sighs. At the police station, Wallace looks pictures of like a manhole cover lifter tool thing after Dexter's suggestion. Oliva is like, it's a great fit for Harrison's dad's description of a Ripper's kill tool. Who has access to a tool like this? She's like, I have looked into that. The hook is used by public workers in the Department of Buildings, the Department of Design and Construction, the Department of Parks and Recreation. And Oliva's like, I love that show. And she's like, and she like looks at him for a second, probably confused. She's like, the Department of Sanitation, the New York City Housing Authority, and select members of the New York State Public Service Commission. Oliva's like, that's a huge, he's like, that's a fudge ton of people. And she's like, we might also look into whether any of the victims of New York Ripper worked in any of these places. So he's like, so the weapon we're searching for is actually a needle. And she's like, as in a haystack? That's a good one. And he's like, I saw that smile. And she's like, And then Batista comes in. Detective Wallace, you wanted to see me? So they take him to like an interrogation room instead of sitting in her office. So he tells them this, he's like, oh, this is actually good timing. He's like, I need some DMV plate search to find someone. And Wallace cuts him off. I spoke with your coworker, Lieutenant Quinn. And that kind of shuts him off. And he kind of sits back. He's like, He's like, I can explain. She's like, as can I. You have been breaking New York State Penal Law 190.26, criminal impersonation of a police officer in the first degree. And Oliva's like, a felony. He's like, look, I apologize for not telling you the whole truth earlier. She's like, you are no longer a captain of homicide. He's like, yes, I retired, but it was my decision. I wasn't fired, and I did it to bring Dexter Morgan to justice. And then the two detectives like look at each other. I spoke with Mr. Morgan. And then Batista's like, he convinced you that he's one of the good guys? She's like, no. He told me about your history. The tragic loss of your partner, Detective Dokes, also known as the Bay Harbor Butcher. And Oliva's like, and the murder of your ex-wife, Maria LaGuerta. And she's like, you have our condolences. And then Batista's like, Dexter Morgan is a fudging liar. And Wallace is like, did you not lose your former partner and ex-wife in the line of duty? He's like, no, I mean, yes, I lost Dokes and Maria. But you see, fudge. It's like, this is what Dexter does. He twists things out of context. He's a master manipulator. He lies and lies, winning people all over with his gee-whiz smile of his. He burrows into your life until he's the last person you suspect of just about anything. But I'm telling you, Dexter Morgan is a Bay Harbor Butcher. She's like, you must cease and desist, Captain. Go home. He's like, but nothing. If you are still here tomorrow, I will have you arrested. Please consider yourself sufficiently forewarned. Go to your hotel. Pack your things. He sighs. He gets up. He starts walking out. Oliva stops him. Miami Metro asks us to have you surrender your shield. He like grits his teeth. He like looks at Wallace, looks at his badge for a couple seconds, runs his thumb over it, hands it over. And then as he's walking out, he like looks at the bullpen, looks like, all the other officers, and then walks out. But he sees a poster for the gala, the police thing, charity thing, and Prater's pictured her. He takes out his phone to confirm it's him. Dexter arrives at his home, hears a woman's voice. He's outside. He like wonders, like, did Charlie figure out where I live? So he opens the door slowly. He puts his keys between his fingers. He's like, hope I'm not bringing car keys to a gunfight. He kind of charges in. Gigi is straddling Harrison on the sofa. They're like making out, and she kind of like gets startled a little bit. Dexter sighs. He's like, Harrison and Gina? And he puts his hand down. He's like, sorry. He's like, I thought someone broke into my apartment. They stand, and she's like, Gigi. And she's to Harrison, she's like, who's this Gina skank? And Dexter's like, no, I got your name wrong. So Dexter doesn't realize she's a compulsive liar. She's like, I know, Mr. Morgan. And she chuckles. He's like, call me Dexter. And Harrison's like, thanks for sending Blessing to pick us up. She's like, that guy's got everything you need in his ride. I mean, everything. Wink, wink. Probably talking about condoms or what, I don't know. Harrison's like, I figured you were out, ride sharing. Thought you wouldn't mind if Gigi came over. And Dexter's like, mi casa, su casa. She's like, Harrison said you worked in the forensics back in the day for homicide. He's like, guilty. Harrison's like, Gigi's actually thinking about majoring in criminal forensics. And she's like, guilty. Dexter's like, well, us forensics guys do all the real work in homicide. Harrison's like, Dad put away a lot of murderers. And she's like, blood splatter analyst, right? He's like, spatter. But yeah. She's like, one of my professors said blood spatter has been largely debunked. And Harrison's like, well, Dad did so much of his work in the late 1900s, which makes it sound so old. And Dexter thinks like, so much for growing old. And he's like, yeah, it's true. Blood spatter analysis can be misused, but in the right hands, it can tell quite a story. Harrison's like, Dad actually helped Detective Wallace identify a potential murder weapon used by the New York Ripper just by looking at the spatter from her lecture. And she's like, oh, color me impressed, Dexter. Which is like annoying. Just the way she says it. So then Dexter's like, so what should we do tonight? I think I have a deck of cards around here. And Harrison's like, we were, and Dexter's like, there is no we for tonight. And then Dexter's like, I'll just straighten up in the kitchen. And in whispering, she's like, do you want to go to my place? I'll let you finish what you started. And Harrison's like, hey, Dad, Gigi and I were thinking about going over to her place. Is that cool? And he's like, yeah, go ahead. You'll be okay. And she's like, I'm going to hit the bathroom. Will that be okay? Because it is a little weird the way Harrison's like an adult and says that. Then he asks if he's sure that, Harrison asks if he's, is he good to go? He doesn't want to get Gigi in any trouble. Dexter says that Prater and Charlie don't know where he lives, and they have zero idea about Gigi, so they're fine. He's like, plus, I had a little talk with Charlie earlier. She won't be a problem anymore. And Harrison's like, he's like, no, just a talk. But when you get to Gigi's, stay there. DoorDash your meals, lie low. Oh, and if you're spending the night there, you might want some protection. You know how to, he has some condoms in a drawer, I guess. And Harrison's like, yeah, I know how it works that. So Charlie's talking to Prater, and she's like, and then he nicked me with it. And Prater's like, with his, jiggly saw? He's like, show me. So she opens her collar, it's like bandaged. She's like, I want to see it. He gets closer, and he's like, he like gasps softly. He actually reaches to touch her neck, and she like harshly flinches back. And he like puts his hand. He's like, he's almost like, my bad. Like, he knew he shouldn't do that. He's like, that's amazing. You survived an encounter with the Dark Passenger. You survived an encounter with an honest to God serial killer. She's like, I could have been killed. He's like, yeah, but you weren't. We're dealing with apex predators here, Charlie. You can't be surprised when a lion bites. It's just what they do. She's like, he was sending us a message. And Prater's like, nah, me. He was sending me a message. And you are the message. Oh, had you been killed, I would have had a big problem. But you weren't, so I don't. Red is growling to me about his son, but the real message here is, I'm still in charge. The Dark Passenger is mine, and more importantly, he wants to continue to play with us. She's like, I don't, and then Prater cuts her off. How's your mother? Medication helping? The new specialist? And she like zips up her collar. His phone rings, and he's like, oh, speak of the devil. So on speakerphone, hello, Red. Charlie and I were just talking about you. It seems you put a bit of a scare into my girl Friday. And Dexter's like, yeah, I was forced to make it clear exactly how serious I am about my son being off limits. Prater's like, yeah, of course. I think Charlie was just being a bit overzealous in her, vetting. I assure you it won't happen again. So, what do I owe the pleasure of this phone call? And Dexter's like, I was thinking about that conversation you said you wanted to have, about having no more surprises. And he thinks, except, of course, the knife I'm going to plunge into your heart. And he says, the sooner the better. And Prater's like, wonderful. Dexter's like, so when do you want to make this happen? Tonight? Prater's like, I could carve out some time tomorrow morning before my gala. Say 10 a.m. Dexter's like, great. And he's like, take the garage entrance, though. Use the elevator. My place will be busy, but the penthouse should be empty. Dexter's like, oh, and cool if it's just between the two of us. No offense, but I don't trust Charlie the way I trust you. Prater's like, of course.
I think after your little visit, it's safe to say the feeling's mutual. Just me and you, no problem. Next day, Batista goes to check out, I guess, Prater's mansion. He's got the address. I don't know if it's the gallows. I don't know if it's there or whatever. He rings the bell. This dude answers. Batista's like, I need to speak with Mr. Leon Prater. The dude's like, do you have an appointment? He's like, no, but I'm Miami. He reaches for it in his pocket, but then he remembers he doesn't have his lying badge anymore. And the guy looks at him. He's like, look, I have to talk with him about a possible threat to his life. And the guy's like, yeah, okay, buddy. How about you get the fudge out of here? And he's like, look, I was a captain in Miami Metro homicide. But it's like, you say that? What is Miami Metro? What Metro? What does that mean? Who cares? He's like, I need to talk with him now. And the guy's like, what you need to do is step off Mr. Prater's property. And he puts his hand on Batista's shoulder. And Batista's like, remove your hand, rent-a-cop. Now, I need to see him now. He says now twice in the same sentence. The dude makes a move, and then Batista twists his arm and pins him against the wall. It's like, what? This guy is supposed to be like a trained bodyguard, and he gets slammed against the wall so easily. Two more guys rush at Batista, and stupidly, so 3 trained guards can't deal with old man Batista. It's ridiculous. Then Charlie easily walks up, twists his arm, and puts a chokehold on him. And Batista's got this shocked look on his face. She's like, now, why exactly is my boss in danger? And he's like, holy spit. Why? But this is oh, crap. Batista's and Charlie are in the same room. This is not going to be good. So Batista's brought into an office. The 3 worthless dudes are standing behind him. Prater comes in. Charlie's like, you 3, leave, because they're worthless. And then she tells Batista to tell Prater who he is. I'm Captain Angel Batista, Miami Metro PD. But where's his badge then? He asks for his phone. He's like, I'm curious how you know this guy. So she takes the phone and brings it closer to Prater because it's a picture of them. And he's like, you mean Mr. Schmidt? And he's like, no, he's Dexter Morgan. I worked with him for over 20 years in Miami Metro homicide. And Prater's eyebrows go up, and Charlie's looking at, so it's crap. He just basically outed Dexter. So Dexter's getting ready. He puts on a fake thumbprint. He's got his hoodie on, a knife. He uses his thumbprint to open the garage gate. He's saying how it's like Red's last visit. He'll miss the food, but not the company. He goes to the elevator, thumbprint again, opens, and he's like, I must admit, at times like this, I wish for a God to pray to, someone to give me that extra armor. And then he's walking down the hall, and Prater greets him. Come in, my friend. And it's like, uh-oh. And Dexter's like, I've been looking forward to this. Prater's like, I thought with everything going on here today, we should meet in my vault, more private. And Dexter's like, perfect. He's like, and that way we can clear the air. Dexter Morgan. Oh, man. He said it. Charlie, she thinks she's so cool. She comes out and she puts a gun to his back. It's almost like slow motion, stylized way she I was like, whatever. She's like, stay cool, stay very cool. And Dexter thinks, he's like, okay, I'll do it. Little help here, God? She pats him down, takes out his phone, finds a knife, and Prater's like, yes, Dexter, I know exactly who you are. And Charlie's pushing him, kicking him to get him moving. It's like, come on. So the lights go on. Dexter sees Batista's taped to his kill table. He's actually kind of strapped to this table, and he's got duct tape over his mouth. So Batista's there, and he's like, I know who you are, and I love it. And Dexter thinks Angel, you just couldn't let go, and now here you are. So Prater's like, I thought it was a bit odd how you were so drawn to the Bay Harbor Butcher's blood slide box when I first showed you my collection. But then, when your pal Batista here told me who you really were, suddenly, boom, it all became clear. Lowell didn't disappear. Nah, neither did Red. You took him out, didn't you? How'd you do it? Dexter scoffs. He's like, what makes you think I'd talk about that in front of him? And then he's like, oh, right. And he's like, shh, he covers up Batista's ears. He's like, I'm just so excited to be talking to the Bay Harbor Butcher, the living, breathing Bay Harbor Butcher. And how
were you able to place all that blame onto James Dokes? That must have fudged with you a little bit, right? The stolen valor of all your kills going to Dokes? Dexter's like, what are we doing here? And he's like, oh, of course. And he chuckles, I have a proposal. Charlie, come on. And she like lowers the gun a little bit, but not completely. He's like, I would like to be your benefactor. Just like I did with the Gemini killer. I will be your medici to your Bay Harbor butcher. Just saying it out loud. Oh, it gives me goosebumps. I have extensive files on serial slayers across the globe. We can invite them here to our little group, spend a week with them, and then you do what you do and add them to your collection. And he like points to the blood slides. Dexter's like, look at him, taking my idea. And he says, and what's the plan for Angel? Prater like takes the display stand with his old knife. That is the price of your admission. Charlie's like, sir, let's not. He's like, Charlie, please. So Dexter takes the blade and Prater like steps back. Angel's like shaking his head. He's like, "Rrr." Dexter like walks around Batista, the other side. He's like, you want a front row seat to see how the Bay Harbor butcher kills? Prater's like, I must admit, I've always wanted to see someone like you at work. Charlie still has her gun pointed at Dexter, and Dexter like motions at her. Prater turns. He's like, Charlie, give me the gun. Come on, it's embarrassing. She hands it to him. Dexter puts his hands on Batista's chest, and he thinks, Angel Batista has threatened my life, my son's life, and now that he's confirmed who I am beyond a shadow of a doubt, he will never give up. He holds the blade up, both hands. He's like, and rule number 1 is, don't get caught. And then whoosh, he slices the straps, holding them down, and he thinks, we were partners once. Maybe we can be partners again. Batista sits up. He goes for Dexter and knocks the blade out of his hand. He shoves Dexter down. He rips the duct tape off his mouth, gets like on top of him, starts choking him. This is for Dokes and for Maria. He's like, your BS has to stop. Dexter tries reaching up, and he thinks like, so much for cooperation. Angel's face is like red, and Dexter thinks like, there's something poetic about dying at the hands of my lifelong friend. And then, pow, 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 pow. Prater stands there with a grin, and Charlie, she kind of grabs him, and he shoots again, like at Dexter, but he hits this like T-set trophy thing that's like on display. Dexter grabs a hatchet off the wall. He throws it, but he misses Charlie. Someone dropped a gun. I don't know if Prater dropped a gun or Charlie, whatever. Maybe it was Prater. Dexter grabs for something. I think it was his blade. And then he goes for the door. It's closing, and Prater like waves goodbye. Dexter curses. Then he sees Batista like trying to sit up after getting shot. It's like 5 times. He goes to him. He's like, there's no coming back from this. No God that can save him. And then he says to Batista, he's like, I need you to know, I didn't kill Maria or Dokes. I may be the Bay Harbor butcher, but I promise you, I didn't kill them. And quietly, Batista's like, it was your fault. And now, I'm dying because of you, just like they did. Dexter's like, I'm sorry. And he's like, Dexter Morgan, fudge you. And he slides over. He's dead. And Dexter's like, ah! And that's the end. One more episode. Oh my goodness. He's got to take out Charlie and Prater because they both know this is bad. But so the good and the bad thing is, I mean, it's unfortunate about Batista. Batista he pushed it. He asked for this. But the good thing is that, Dexter can't kill him. Batista can't live if he knows the secret. But Dexter can't kill him because he's got his code, and Batista doesn't fit the code. So at least this way, with Prater shooting him, it takes care of the problem. But yeah, there we go. So one more episode. All right, then Twisted Metal, Season 2, Episode 8, SDDNDTH. It's like, what? We'll talk about it at the end. Sidin, whatever. So it starts off, Old Orleans, Louisiana. This dude is like decorating a cake. This white dude comes in. The cake dude greets him. The white dude says he needs an anniversary cake that feeds 8, and he holds out an envelope. The cake dude's like, that's a big ass cake. The white dude's like, it's a special occasion. And he's like, put on my tab. So then the cake guy's like, you got it. He takes the card. He looks at it when the guy leaves. It's all it says inside in the envelopes, 95 River Park Road. So later he goes to the address. He puts a silencer on a gun. He goes through like this open garage, shoots a guy, and goes inside, shoots this other guy. And there's like drugs or something on the table. So the cake guy's, obviously this is fake. The cake guy is really a killer. So he has to reload. This woman comes at him with like a box cutter, but he grabs her arm, jabs into her throat. Hears like a baby crying, and then there's a flash of experience. So this is, if you didn't know, this is Axel. Then he freaks out because the bug lady, he wakes up, the bug lady's like crouched and staring at him. She like says something because they had to share a room at Calypso's place. We see Quiet, she's jogging in a gym, and she's thinking back to the conversation argument with John. He's yelling, he's like, I'm not being selfish. And she's like, you made your own wish and you didn't tell me. She's like, you put our lives, the mission, all of us in danger. And he's like, this is why I didn't want to tell you. And she's like, and that's pretty fudging selfish. Back in the gym, she's like stops to catch her breath, and Mr. Grimm's like sitting and he laughs, and she's like, what are you looking at? He's like, I think I'm looking at a lonely soul. He's like, you can always join us. And he like kind of laughs, and she like says something, whatever, to him. She continues running, and then Grimm's just talking to himself about how it'd be easier to pick her off if she's distracted or whatever. I don't know. John's doing laundry, and then he thinks back to the argument. Quiet said that he was being small-minded, that this is bigger than them, that he's being an a-hole for not getting that. And she curses and says that, she's like, I can't even look at you now. He's like, no problem, I'm leaving. And she's kind of like shocked, and he like storms out, slams the door. And then the bug lady's standing in the doorway to the laundry room and asks if he's trying to wash the smell of betrayal off his hot little body or something like that. And she's like, the walls are paper thin, so everyone knows what's going on. And he's like, I didn't betray anyone. Then we see the doctor dude. He's talking with Sweet Tooth. Says, part of the procedures to check on how they're doing and all this stuff like that. Sweet Tooth says, like, I'm in the best shape of my life. And Doc's like, that's actually why I wanted to speak with you. He's like, I received the results from your physical exam. He's like, I found something. And Sweet Tooth's like, oh, are you serious? He's like, I thought I'd have more time. And he's like, all right, don't sugarcoat it. The doctor says that he's sterile. And then he has to explain what that means. He's like, you can't have any children. And then he's like, of course I can. He's like, adoption or whatever, something like that. And the doctor, so he has to clarify, he's like talking biologically. And then he shows him on a model, and they're talking about like testicles. He's like, you have too many testicles. Unfortunately, none of them work. He's like, yours can't make sperms. Like, do you understand? And Sweet Tooth's like, yes, no, I do not. So like, this is a point where, does it matter? Do we care if Sweet Tooth is sterile or not? How will this impact the show? What is the point of this? Maybe there's a point, I don't know. We'll see. Quiet continues like working out. Frostbite's like on a treadmill. Because we see, I think it was before this, we see like Raven walking down the hall, and there's like lights are flickering, and she's like, Calypso's got to fix that. And then there's like all these people walking behind her. Like, who are these people? At first I was like, are these like the Road Warrior people that we saw? I forget what their name is. But Frostbite, because she's talking about, how John and Quiet like broke up, and she's saying like, a good guy or good guys, is like a terrible thing to waste. And then Quiet's like, well, you can have them type of thing or whatever. And she's like, oh, you don't mind or whatever. And Quiet's like, well, John can do what he wants. So Frostbite's like, oh, that's good to hear. And she's talking about like even in Arctic, the girl code's an important thing. But then all of a sudden, bam, she gets smashed in the face. Like someone punches her. There's like bald dude with like a burn or some sort of like marking on his face. And like he's trying to look all creepy and, quiet and whatever. And then, so these are like the ones from the hall. Calypso gets on an intercom, on a PA. He congratulates them on a previous round. He says he has a bonus round. He's like, I trust that you're all ready to fight. So Axel hears this, runs out of his room. Calypso says that he's invited some new friends to join the fray, the Apocalypse 9. They feel nothing and are very hard to kill. They are the ultimate hunters of man, and they are on your scent. So Axel discovers that the vehicle area is like locked. Calypso's like, it's a shame you won't have your weapons, but I've always found artillery to be a crutch. You'll just have to use brains, brawn, and good old American gumption. The rules are simple. all of you versus all of them. So John's like, quiet, because, he's concerned about her. Calypso's like, whoever's left standing when the sun rises will move on. Good luck. I'm sure he giggles or whatever. So Stu, Mike, and Dave are in this room. They put a bunch of like furniture in front of the door, like to barricade it. And Mike's like, nobody can get in. And then Axel easily opens the door because it opens out instead of in. So it was so dumb. He comes in, closes the door, and he puts like a metal bar or like pole through the door and like bends it. And so this is actually going to hold the door. And he's like out of breath. He's like, I can't get my gas. We're all going to die. And then they're all like kind of look at each other like, oh crap. The one in the workout room with Quiet like throws something. I think it was like a big 45-pound weight. She like ducks and then she like punches him like 4 times, no effect. And then he grabs her by the throat and gut punches her, throws her against, I think it was like some bars, like a bunch of racks or like that. She goes down. So I feel like I missed something. I don't know if the bars fell on her, because then Frostbite comes in, like punches him a couple times. Again, no effect. He like headbutts her and then he like hits her. And then this is kind of gross. So I don't know if this is the end of, I don't remember if they showed Frostbite again, but this dude turns on the treadmill and it's like at a high speed. And then he like shoves her face like onto the treadmill. So it's basically like sanding her face off, like the side of her face. And it's just like, Quiet is apparently under like a bar and weights. So this is a part, I don't know if I missed something, but so she's like kind of choking. It seems a little silly, because even if they were like 45-pound weights, I don't feel like, I feel like she could turn her head to the side and still slide under. Maybe not, but so she's choking, and then he picks up like 2, maybe like 30-pound dumbbells, maybe more, because he's probably just going to smash her. He's walking up to her, but then he gets hit behind by Raven, and Raven has a big, again, I'm assuming it's like a 45-pound weight. She's like, bam, he goes down, and she brings the weight down on his head. I think we don't see it. I would assume it to be on his head or his throat or something like that, because it's just like a splat. And then she like almost gagged, because there's like blood like splurts up from the impact or whatever she hit. And then she lifts the weight off of Quiet's neck, like rather easily. So it's like, I don't know why Quiet couldn't do that. Maybe it was just a weird position. I've never been in that position with a bar around my neck. So, and she did get hit a few times. I don't know. And Quiet's like, she's surprised. She's like, you saved me. And Raven's like, for now. It's like, I plan on eviscerating you in the next round. But first, we need to take care of these fudgers. And then she like extends her hand to help Quiet up. So then they leave. As they leave the room, the dude that got smashed, he sits up. So he didn't get his head smashed or chopped off or anything like that. He's still in the game. John's like creeping around, and he's wearing like a basketball jersey over like a t-shirt, and he's like, I think he's wearing shorts. I'm assuming his clothes are still in the laundry or something like that, because that's what he was doing. So he could probably just put on what he could find. I'm trying to remember what he was wearing now. But anyways, so he gets attacked in the hall, and he like flings a person out, someone like jumps on his back. It's Mayhem. So she kind of goes through like a glass trophy case, and he's like, what the hell are you doing? And she's like, I thought you're some evil basketball dude or something. Which is like, are you normally like fighting evil basketball dudes or whatever? So they talk a little bit, but then he moves on, and she goes after him, and she's like, where are you going? He's like, I need to find Quiet, make sure she's okay. And Mayhem's like, oh, are you sure you want to do that? And he's like, you don't know the whole story. And Mayhem's like, well, I know you screwed up. And he's like, these are complicated emotions, and you would understand. And I have like this kind of like dislike thing with Mayhem, because I find her annoying sometimes, but I find her also kind of funny often. And she does seem to come up with, she's very lucky or somehow skilled. I don't know. But he's like, you wouldn't understand. And she's like, oh, I wouldn't? She's like, I'm a divorcee. Because she said that she was married when she was like 12, or I don't know if that's even true. Because she lies. She exaggerates. But then they hear some like metal scraping up ahead. So there's a guy who seems to have like a hook for a hand, and he's scraping on the lockers, and they run. He's just like walking after him. And John's like, is that Freddy Krueger? I was a little surprised that he knew who that was. I'm trying to, I'm not going to go back and watch season 1 anytime soon, but I'm trying to remember like how much stuff he knows, because he was young. He was a kid when all this went down, and he was on his own. So would he have seen Nightmare on Elm Street? And would he have seen it ever? Because he did like movies. He talked when him and Quiet were in a like movie theater. So it's like, would he really know who? There's like other things that he doesn't know. So I don't know. But then the Hook guy, he like looks in a trophy case and there's like a little puddle of blood from Mayhem. So I guess she got cut like pretty nasty or something like that. She didn't seem to mind. And he dips the Hook into it. And he like looks at it and like licks it. So it's like, okay, you are a weirdo dude. Stu is like freaking out. He's like, if the dude with the metal arms is scared, he's like, "Where's Fudge?" Dave goes up to him. He's like, "Hey, what's up?" And Axel's like, "I can't fight without gas." And he's like, if I can't fight, I can't kill. We're all dead. He's like, I need it. I need that gas. I need that poop. And Mike's like, that's cool. He's like, but nobody has their wheels this round. And he's like, I don't need it for my wheels, dumbass. I need it for me. It's like, I drink it. It's like, I'm a killing machine powered by pure premium unleaded. Stuart like, okay, that's different. And Dave kind of like chastises him. He's like, hey, Stu. He's like, keep the opinions outside. This is a judgment-free zone. And then I think Dave thinks that the gas is psychological. So is he onto something? Because he tells Mike, he's like, like the circle up the chairs or something like that. And Stuart's like, there's killers. He's like, we shouldn't we just get him to the gas so he can fight? And Dave's like, Axel's most important fight is the one within. So they're going to have an intervention. Stuart and Axel are like confused, and Dave tells Axel, he's like, you're going to love it. In the halls, Raven picks up like a trophy. There's like, someone like holding up a star, and it's pretty solid. She sees, like, okay, she can use that as a weapon to stab someone. Then she asks Quiet if she knows who these bottom feeders are, and Quiet's like, they're at Apocalypse 9. And it's like, they're fudging nuts. And she's like, you know why their skin is yellow? It's like they burn their nerve endings so they don't feel poop. Raven's asks like, well, where's John? I thought you two didn't go anywhere without each other. And Quiet's like, well, it's none of your business. And Raven's like, oh, it's true then. He made another wish. And Raven is surprised when Quiet said that he wished for his sister, to come back to life. And Raven thought it'd be more superficial. I think she says something like a big house or a big penis or something. And then they hear a scream. There's like a big puddle of blood on the floor. They go into a closed room, which doesn't seem like the smartest thing. But then they freak out because there's like someone tied up, like hanging upside down. I think the head was missing, maybe, I don't know. And they were like, what kind of sicko would do this? It turns out it was Vermin. So Vermin was there. And then, they're like, okay, since you got this covered, we're going to leave. And Vermin's like, okay. She's like, I'll just be here alone or with this guy. And they reluctantly ask her if she wants to go with them. And she's like, yes. She does. She's like hinting. And she starts vocalizing. She's like, girls' night. John and Mayhem are looking for weapons. They start bickering over survival. Mayhem's like playing with like a talk boy. So she finds this thing. She thinks it's like cool or whatever. And John's like kind of getting a little annoyed or whatever. And they're talking about survival. And, he says that because she's like, you don't know anything. And he's like, he says he's been on his own since he was 12. And she's like, I've been alone on my own since I was 7. And he's like, well, it was, for me, it was the beginning of the apocalypse when poop was hard. And she's like, oh, yeah, must have been real hard with all this stuff and food to loot. It's like it was all gone by the time my generation came around. And he's like, oh, you just want everything handed to you. And then he says that when he was a kid, you had to get a car and go and find stuff. And she's like, a car? It's like, what car? It's like, none of them were left after the old timers like you took them all. It's like, I bet in your day you could trip and fall and smack your head in a car. And he's like, no. It's like, true. And then she kind of gives him like a, come on, look. Then he's like, yeah, well, you should have joined a group or something. And she's like, you don't think I tried? It's like, everyone that I found, there was a weirdo sex pest or a lunatic. It's like, I never found people who wanted me around, who actually got me. And John's like, yeah. It's like, I know that feeling. And she's like, all right, come on. It's like, what happened between you guys? John's like, we got in a fight, a big one. She told me she couldn't stand the sight of me. And she's like, so? He's like, so I left. And she like scoffs. She's like, so you took the easy way out. Classic bitch move. Then they hear screaming. And then he's like, do you have any ideas? And she gets her Mayhem big smile on her face. And she's like, one. Mr. Grimm is walking upstairs. He caught a couple of fish. He's like, oh, Mr. Grimm got a good turnout or something like that. He's like, he's got all the voices in his head talking himself. But then he goes to the door at the top of the stairs and turns out he's locked out now. And he's like, he just confused. He didn't know what's going on. Inside, like Quiet, Raven, and Vermin run by because they're being chased. And Mr. Grimm's like, he knocks on the door. He's like, hello. But, they just I think they're being chased by like three of the crazy dudes. In the intervention, Mike tries getting Axel to talk. He says that he knows it's not easy, but, this is a safe space. And they're screaming outside, stupid Stewart. He's like, this place is actually dangerous. He's like, do we really have time for this? He's like, one of those vents must lead to the garage where the gas is. And Mike's like, hey, Stu. He's like, trust the process. Axel says that his life started out fine enough, but then things got tough after his daddy left. And Dave's like, oh, that's tough. And Axel's like, if I'm being honest, he's like, losing my wife was tougher. It's like, she cheated on me with my dad. And Dave and Mike are kind of like, wow, and they talk about like karma, coming for them. Stu's like incredulous, and he's just listening to the screaming. Axel says that, karma didn't come for them because they got married and they moved to Napa. So he stayed in Louisiana. Work was hard to come by, so he took a lot of debt from the wrong people. And Stu asks, he's like, oh, so you started drinking gas? Axel's like, no. He's like, I had to work off what I owed by killing. He's like, one day I got a job, the usual assignment, eliminate everyone. But they forgot to mention one thing. And there's a flashback to the baby that we saw at the beginning. And Stu's like, oh, so you're haunted by killing a baby. And he's like, bitch. He's like, I didn't kill no baby. He's like, I'd never kill a kid. And Stu's like, oh, of course not. And then he's like, I got the child out of there. And we went on a run. For a long time, it was just the two of us on the road. Like, those were the good days. Some of the best of my life. And Mike's like, dude, I mean, you did save the kid, right? He's like, you should be proud of yourself, brother. And he's like, one day, vultures raided my camp. I fought as hard as I could, but they knocked me out. Last thing I remember is that baby screaming. When I came to, the kid was gone. So I went looking for her. Then I met the scientist, Zimu. He said that he'd help me find her. Instead, he trapped me, tortured me, did experiments, took away my hands. He put me in wheels, and that's when the gas came in. And Stu whispered, that's when he started drinking the gas. He's like, all I had were my wheels and that gas can. So if we get it, I have to try and take it straight to the dome. And Dave, he's like, look, guys, I know what's going on here. He's like, you think the gas controls you. And Mike's like, right, but you were murdering people before the gas. Dave's like, look, man, on the real, I used to eat human flesh. It's fudging gross. And it turned me into a different person. But eventually, I learned to forgive myself. And I learned to move the fudge on with a little help from a friend. And he winks at Mike. And Axel's like, it's easy for you to say. It's just me and my wheels. And then there's like a loud banging on the door starts up. Dave and Mike like look at each other. Stu leans forward. He's like, then lean on us. He's like, you're not alone anymore. We believe in you, even if you don't right now. We know that you can murder anyone if you put your mind at murdering. And then he says, stone cold sobs. Sobs? I'm not sure what he meant by that. And Dave's like, I couldn't have said it better. Beautiful stuff, Stu. And then a hand like busts through the door. And then there's like two arms busting through. Axel like looks around and he gets up. He's like, you want Axel? He's like, here I am, mother truckers. And he like growls. He goes and he opens the doors and there's like three dudes out there. They all turn and run. And he like walks after him. Inside they're like chanting his name. And then they start walking after him in the hall. Axel, Axel, Axel. Quiet stabs a dude like over and over again. Like, quick, 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 quick. Raven's like, she's just talking like casually. So he wished for his sister to come back? How's that selfish? And Vermin's like, yeah. It's not like he wished for a bug body or beetle wings or a bigger penis or something. And Quiet's like, fine. What he wished for wasn't exactly selfish, but he still risked the mission. Raven's like, he risked your mission. Guess he thought saving one person was more important. He's like, I agree. And Quiet's like, that doesn't change the fact that he kept a secret from me. We're supposed to have each other's backs. Raven's like, are you really that fudging dense? Do you know how many times John tried to escape my city to get back to you? 15 times. It's like the dumbass even cracked his head open, falling from a hang glider made of pizza boxes. and that, just thinking about that, it's like so typical for something that like John would totally do that because he was delivering pizzas. So of course he would make a hang glider from pizza boxes. We didn't see that, but she's like, he's not a thinker. She's like, God, you two morons are made for each other. Then the body starts moving, so they all start kicking it, even though Quiet stabbed it a bunch of times. Then Vermin's like, excuse me. He's like, here comes the boot. And stomps on him. Then Vermin asks if she ever told him about Ronald. He was the love of her life. And she starts going on, and Raven's like, no one cares. And then Vermin actually starts talking again about being at camp. They both had to sneak away from their camps or whatever. And despite their differences, they made it work. So there's a little logic. What you can relate that to Quiet. But no one wants to hear about Vermin's story because she's not a main character. And then Quiet's actually, she's like, what happened to Ronald? And then she's like, oh, I dumped his ass when he wouldn't put out. Then there's more screaming outside. Quiet's worried, like, was that John? Could it be John? And then she's like, oh, or maybe it was Stu. She's just trying to be all cool about it and everything. She's like, oh, we should probably go check. But she's really concerned, obviously. So the hook hand killer, he's walking around. He hears like muffled panting. So he opens a cabinet. It's a talk boy in there with the recording that Mayhem made, like breathing, whatever. Then there's like, surprise, mother trucker. John like hits him from behind, and Mayhem, she has like a stick or like a bat, almost like that. John's like punching him. They take turns hitting everything, but it's not stopping him. Then they end up getting like a chain around his neck, and they like knock him down on a table. John's like holding him down. He tells Mayhem, he's like, no. So she's kind of like pulling like towards her at the other end of the table, and John's kind of like trying to push and keep him down because there's like a table saw. There's like the buzzsaw zzz, slices his head in two. There's blood all over, blood saw like all over Mayhem. And then she makes a comment. She's like, I think he pissed his pants. And John's like, he's like, oh, are you good? And she's like, yeah, why? Did I get some on me? So I guess she's okay with the killing now. And obviously, I mean, this isn't a regular guy, but she's like, it doesn't even faze her. So they exit a room, and he's like, that was cool. He's like, how'd you come up with that? And she's like, she said that she hid out in a Blockbuster for a month and survived off of nothing but stale candy and horror movies. John's like, horror movies? He's like, nah, that's too scary. She calls him a wussy, but not a wussy. And she's like, come on, horror movies are great. And she's like, although I refuse to watch Deep Blue Sea. She's like, I do not mess with the ocean. And John's like, wait, finally, someone understands that the ocean sucks. Because he's mentioned that before. They both laugh, and then they stop. And there's like, ooh, spit. There's like 5 dudes coming their way. 5 of the Apocalypse 9 guys. John's like, don't worry about it. It's like, the way we took that guy down, we can't. She started running like as soon as he started talking. She's like already around the corner. So he starts running too. They enter the cafeteria, and then they come across, they find Quiet, Raven, and Vermin. And Quiet's like, John. And he's like, thank God you're alive. And then she's like, well, don't jinx it. The 5 guys walk in. So John, Mayhem, they like kind of get in a fighting stance, and then Axel comes, like pushes his way through them. He's like, out of my way, I got this. He charges at them, starts like whacking with his big metal hands, and then while he's fighting, the Crash Test Dummy songs, that song, yeah, once there was a kid who, that starts playing. Like he grabs one by the neck, like cracks it, tears another one's arms off, and there's like blood like flying. He smothers another one, like grabs him by the mouth, and like kind of almost smothers him, rips the head off, and the others are trying not to get like blood rained on them or whatever. And Mayhem's like, thank God he's on our side. And John's like, for now. Then Axel's like, I did it. I killed without the gas. And Dave's there. He's like, you did so good, bro. He's like, hey, you slaughtered those 12 steps. But so some blood had actually splattered on Dave, and some like kind of drips into his mouth, and he's like, oh, because he like tastes it. So I don't know if he's going to get his cannibalistic urges back, whatever. Mike whispers to Stu that, he doesn't think taking the guy's one weakness away was a good idea. Then Sweet Tooth comes in. He's like, Stu, there you are. He's like, I don't know about you, but I have had quite the day. He's like, long story short, doctor said my nuts are broken, so I won't be pooping out a baby anytime soon. He's like, and it made me think and reevaluate my life. What I want, I'm adopting you, son. And Stu's like, oh, wow, what? And then he's like, let's play. He picks up a severed head. He's like, catch. And then he kind of like drops it, whatever. And then there's chimes over to PA. Congratulations, my friends, to those who survived. The Apocalypse 9 have been defeated. You work well as a team. Too bad, because next round is every man for himself. Later, Quiet sitting in a room. John comes in. He's like, can we talk? And she's like, yeah. He's like, Quiet, I'm sorry I messed up real bad. She's like, you did. He's like, I made a snap decision. I regret it. She takes a doll face mask out of a drawer, and she's like, when Krista died, we didn't really have time to process it. She's like, I'm sorry for that. It just happened so fast. Because the thing is, John, he was just coming around to this is his sister, his one connection to his past. He didn't know her, but he was getting to know her. And then suddenly she's gone. So she's like, if you ever want to talk about her, just ask. And she hands him the mask. And she says, I think you should have it. He's like, thanks. And he sets it down. He's like, come on. He's like, we can fix this. He opens the door to the hall, but then it's not the hallway out there. It's like the wishing well room. He's like, what the hell? They enter, Calypso laughs, and then the door slams, like shut behind him. And that's the end of episode 8. So what I realize, I'm like way behind. Since they've been doing 2 episodes per week, I think the last episode dropped like August 28th or like the end of August. And now here, we're like halfway through September. So part of me is like, should I keep going? I want to watch it. Hopefully you're okay with this. So going back to the title, SDDNDTH. I had no idea what this was. I had to Google it. I had to look it up. I was like, what does this mean? It's supposed to mean sudden death. SDDNDTH. Sudden death. It's a stretch, but I guess that's how it goes. So that was a Twisted Metal. So, episode 8. Next week we'll cover 9.
Okay, Alien Earth, Season 1, Episode 5, In Space, No One, ... This okay, I feel like I say this all the time, but this was an interesting episode because it wasn't what I expected. And when it first started, I'm like, what's going on? It goes back to the ship before it crashed. And I'm like, why are we going back? It's like, we're so beyond that. The ship has crashed. They're on Earth, and all this stuff is going on. But it's like, now we're going back, and we've seen like scenes from the ship. We've seen the crew, and there is a couple parts like overlap that we see again. But I'm like, why are we seeing this? And then as it goes on, it's like, oh, okay, because we're finding some more stuff out. So it starts off 17 days from Earth. This dude Clem, he wakes Morrow up because Morrow's like, I guess, in the cryopod, and Morrow asks, he's like, what day is it? Is it the changeover? He's like, why isn't an alarm on? And Clem says that that's what he's like. Well, you just listen. He's like, there was a fire in a containment. He's like, they got it out, but there's a creature loose. He's like, well, 2. Not loose, not like missing. We know where one's dead, I think, and the other, the other 2 got one, the octopus with the long fingers, and they got Captain Dinsdale and Bronchi. The captain's dead, but I got them both in the med bay, and then he's like, they used the word compromised. So Morrow goes in the med bay, and he asks what happened, so that this the lady, I think what was her name, Zavery. So she's like, you're in your underwear. And he's just repeats, he's like, what happened? And then they're like, the captain said, he's like, I see that. So there's a face hugger on his face. And they're like, I tried to remove the creature, but it was on pretty tight. So I made an incision at the base of the tail, and he just died. And someone's like, the lady's like, they bleed acid. And then he's like, Clem said there was a fire. So another person, there's like so many people in here, and I hate to say it, it doesn't matter what their names are, right? Because they're all going to die in the ship anyways. We saw that already. So the one's like, the fire was in the containment room, sprinklers were on. Captain got there first, put it out. 2 of the containment pods must have been open, and the arthropods eggs or something like that hatched. He's like, what caused the fire? And they start like kind of like bickering or talking that, they don't really know. He's like, well, why were the egg crates open? So then the lady tries cutting him off, and Morrow's like, he's like, I'm assessing the because she says that, he's not in charge, but he said he's assessing the threat. And she's like, there'll be time for that. So like, right now the captain is dead and my science officer is compromised. And she's like, how do we get it off if we can't cut it off? And then the lady doc, she's like, well, the protocols are clear. Any crew member who comes into contact with alien life forms are to be placed in cryosleep for the remainder of the journey. And this other dude's like, well, that's going to 2 weeks, 3 days and 6 hours. Clem asks if he means freeze it with that thing humping his face for the rest of the ride. And Morrow's like, what's the status of the other entities? So he tells a couple to, make sure that the rest of the creatures are secure. The lady in charge now, new captain, she asks Morrow to get dressed and meet her on a bridge. So he tells a couple dudes in the hall, I think these engineer dudes, to put the two in airlock and be done with them. But then the one engineer, he's like, what she didn't tell him was that the fire fried their navigational systems and their engine relays, meaning that the spaceship, they were a spaceship, but now they're a missile and they're headed towards Earth. In the containment room, so there's these sensors for like every containment things, like all the lights are green. So that means the seals haven't been broken. So everything's good there for now. Morrow tells this lady that it was either incompetence or sabotage. Those are the only likely scenarios. So Mother, the computer, runs routine systems checks. Engineers do stress tests. A random fire breaking out in an empty containment room in the exact panel that controls navigation speed. He's like, BS. Well, she's like, well, we don't know anything yet. It could be equipment failure. And he says that she needs to call a system-wide emergency so he can start an official inquiry. And she's like, well, there'll be crazy panic if we, tell everyone there's a saboteur on board. And so she says that she needs to take this to Mother. Then Morrow stands there for a couple seconds and says that, she was sleeping with Bronsky, the one guy, because that's what Clem told him. And it's like, where he's like, there's footage of it too. And he's like talking about it. It's like, you're such a creep. So I'm not sure what Clem's role is. Is Clem, I don't know if Clem is part of security. Like, is he like under Morrow, or is, I don't really know. She scoffs and then starts to question like, what he's talking about. Morrow says that, company policy forbids romantic relationship between crew members. And she's like, well, how do you know that? And he says that he's a head of security for this ship. So he knows everything, which, he didn't know until Clem told him. But, she asks, doesn't he ever get lonely out here? And Morrow says that, she's distracted, her judgment's compromised. And in the event, the security officer believes the acting captain is not doing everything necessary to protect the ship, he may take command himself. And she's like, fudge you. She's like, that's mutiny. She's like, I'm responsible for the safety and well-being of my people. And he says, and I am responsible for getting this cargo back to Earth intact. Those instructions are from the company are crystal clear whether or not the crew survives. And she's like, fine, let's go see Mother together. And he chuckles. He's like, you talk to the computer. My orders are from Yutani herself. Nothing matters but the cargo. Not you, not me, not the fudging cat. So declare the emergency. I'm just laughing. It's like we didn't even see the cat, but we saw the cat in that I think it was the first episode where that friggin' eyeball creature, that thing was in the cat. It's like, where's the cat at? And he mentions the cat. Clement and this other dude, they stick the guy with the face hugger into the cryo tube. The other guy, this guy Tang. What the heck is his problem? Where they think Tang is like a robot because he's just so creepy and everything. But so they yell at Tang this because he's watching over this lady in the cryo. They're like stop being a creepy, whatever. And the guy, he's like, I'm going to tell the captain. And then Tang kind of smirks. He's like, Captain's dead. So Morrow checks out the specimens. He looks at there's a hole in the floor from the acid blood. He drops his cigar down and it falls like several levels down. Then later he's sitting in front of a bunch of monitors and he's trying to pinpoint like how the fire started. He sees a face hugger attached, but he also sees the person who started the fire, but he can't make out the detail. He's like, who are you? So the new captain now, I'm just going to call it new captain, the lady, she looks at her fling buddy in cryo with the face hugger on. And then she sprinkles some like powder on his pod. I don't know. Am I supposed to know what this is? Is it dirt? Is it like a religious thing? I don't really know why she's doing this because she does it later also. And so it must mean something. I don't know if I'm just a complete knucklehead and just unaware. Maro's also watching the encounter between the two, while they're going at it, and she tells him that they're almost home and whatever. Maro then goes to the two engineer guys. He tells him that he's getting around the ship. The saboteur is getting around the ship without using the halls, so he needs to see blueprints. He needs to see like the crawl spaces and stuff like that. He asks the older dude where are they on the repairs, and he says that the relays are severed. Trunk coils need to be replaced. It'll take days, not hours. So whoever it was knew exactly what they were doing. The younger guy, he's like, someone intentionally did this? And Maro's like, you say nothing, either of you. Failure to comply with a direct order from your security officer in the course of a criminal investigation will result in a total forfeiture of your shares. So Clem talks to Maro later, asks if he saw the footage. He says, could it be anyone, even him? Then Maro extends his blade from his hand, and he holds it close to Clem's throat. He's like, is it you? And he's like, no. He's like, come on, I was just saying. And Maro hands him a blaster, asks him if he's access to communication logs. Clem says that he tried, but someone deleted the files. So he's running a recovery program. And, does Maro think that that'll help them figure out who did this? And he's like, innocent people don't destroy evidence. So new captain, the lady, she talks to Mother, explains the command change. Executive officer Zoya Zavary has taken command. So that's her name, but who cares? Mother asks about the cargo status. Is there containment? And survival of category top priority. And then it's like, acknowledge. And she's just sitting there because basically Mother's saying it's all about the cargo, these specimens. And then she's like, acknowledge that you hear this, acknowledge. And she's probably pissed off. And she didn't want to admit Maro's right, but then she's like, fudge you. And she types acknowledge. Maro looks at his personal effects. There's a picture of his baby daughter. There's like other messages, and I think there's like copies of stuff that have been sent, because then he has a flashback when he's sitting on a beach with his daughter, and he points to a star and he says that that's where he'll be, and if she gets lonely or misses him, that she can talk like I guess in that direction. And then he looks at this like printout message. It says it's from mission year 8 of 65. So his daughter 19 died in a fire. So her effects will be like waiting for him, whatever, in 53 years. So his daughter died. He didn't even get to know about it. Then there's like, I think there's like an explosion or there's something that happens, and I wasn't sure if it was before or now. Some like pod thing gets like jettisoned or something. I don't know. So the new captain Maro and the older engineer dude and Tang, they're all like together. And she asks the engineer to talk to her, and he asks her if she wants the public version or the private one, because Tang's sitting right there. And then she asks Tang to give them a minute, and he's such, I can't stand him. He's like, why? So he can tell you somebody blew a hole in the ship after setting fire to our engine controls? I'm not an idiot. So the engineer says that the saboteur knew just how to hurt them. Their fuel reserves are down to 8%. So in 24 hours, the ship turns from a missile to an arrow. And Maro's like, I need navigation control. So Captain's like, we need help. It's like, we need to wake up the rest of the crew. Then Mother says over to intercom, cryopod quarantine breach. It says that several times, so they start running. When they arrive at the pod room, the captain's pod with the has a hole in the glass that we saw later, so that the face hugger escaped basically. His captain says that it was frozen solid this morning, and then the dude in there, I think it's the doctor. He's a doctor. I think it's the dude with the beard. He says that he's not sure, but what if you can't freeze these things? The metabolism, whatever they metabolize, they know that they can survive in the cold vacuum of space. So why not? Then they try figuring out what happened, but Maro says it doesn't matter now. What matters is it implanted an embryo, and the embryo hatched. So now it's loose on the ship. The other guy's like, well, we can wake everyone up and form search parties. And Maro's like, no. He's like, with a saboteur loose, and then 10 more people and creatures. He's like, we don't need the headache. So dude's like, well, they could just go and find some nests. How big could it get? And then captain's like, wait, how big do these things get? Really big. Maro gets a blaster, Captain says that, he saw in a containment room that if they shoot this thing, it bleeds and the acid is going to eat through the hull of the ship and then they'll all die. But he shows her his gun. He's like, electric, non-lethal. You see it, you pull the trigger till it hits the floor. Capture, don't kill. So then the lady doc, she's logging some specimens. She notes that one species feeds off the oxygen in blood, so they won't feed on dead animals. And she puts this dead rat in the container. There's like this big like round glass thing. It looks like she's being watched because it's like weird, this weird camera angle. But it's the octo eyeball critter. So and she sees it looking at her, and she's like, "Take a picture. It lasts longer." So then the one that she's logging has been deprived of food for weeks. So she has like a metal flask with water. She keeps drinking. She drinks a lot of water. So then she sets her flask down, and then like some water like spills out. So it's like it's a weird, really weird like close up camera angle. So it's like, okay, something's gonna happen here. But then one like critter, they're almost kind of like, I don't know how you describe it. It's not quite like a shrimp, but it's like this weird flat thing with like a bunch of arms or tentacles or something like that. So one is able to, so the metal containers have like a lever on the side that opens on the top. I don't even know how to describe this. It's like a circular thing that like, it kind of like spin shutters, whatever, shut. So there's a lever that it sticks its tentacle out and is able to like open the top. And so now that the top thing is open. And the octo guy sees that the bug thing like escape, and it actually starts like kind of like tapping, like banging on the glass. And then she's like, "I've had enough out of you." And she takes a container and she sets it by like a storage drawer. So meanwhile, the bug thing climbs up her water flask. It like peers over, spits out water into it, and there's like all these little like tadpole like bugs or something in the water. So now her flask is contaminated, which is like so gross to think about. This is why, well, not why, but whenever I have my water stuff out, I never leave it open because you never know what alien things are gonna come, right? So then the thing crawls off her water flask, and it crawls like on, I think it was a sandwich, either a sandwich or like a few pieces of bread. But it like crawls into the sandwich. The beard doctor dude, he comes in and curses because he sees that it's between the bread. And she's like, "I don't know how it got out. It's because you let it escape." So he picks it up with some tongs, whatever. And he tells her that she didn't put like the top thing on. She's like, "But I always do that." So there's like this other like big metal thing that she didn't put on. So I think she messed up with that. So then he tells her that they have to go to the mess hall because Bronski's dead. And then what does she do? She grabs her water flask with all the little contaminated bug things in there. So they leave, but then the computer shows that one of the containment things not secured. There's like a red light instead of green. And then the octo eyeball thing is like kind of slingshotting itself. It's like holding on and then like pulling back and like hitting the edge of the glass. So it starts like sliding, and then it falls off and shatters. So it escapes. In the mess hall, Captain tells them that they thought that the cryopod would contain the creature, but it escaped. Bronski's dead. The one lady is lady doc is about to take a drink from her flask. And again, it's like, dang, man, how thirsty is she? It's like, I know you're supposed to drink water, but she's drinking a lot. The engineer dude kind of bumps into her, and she's like, "Watch it." But he's like, okay, he just saved your life right now, maybe, or whatever's going on. And he's like, "Pardon me, your majesty." So then the new captain tells them that it's a xenomorph still in early stages of development, but it's growing fast. So their plan is to sweep the ship and to recapture it. They like start protesting, arguing, stuff like that, and she has to like tell them like enough, because they're I guess maybe because she's a new captain, so they're still like not fully giving her respect or listening. So she says it's company protocol, and then Tang mutters for her, it's like, "Why don't you tell him about the fuel?" And she sarcastically thanks him. The other engineer dude says that the tank blew, so they're flying on fumes. The new captain tells them that there's also a saboteur on the ship. The younger engineer starts like eating, and she gets mad at him. She's like, "This is a meeting, not a meal." He's like, "Whoa," because she said that they're going to be restricted to their quarters for like non-essential movement or something like that. So he's like, "Well, I don't know how long we'll be, locked up there. So might as well eat while I'm here." And then meanwhile, the camera's like panning closer and closer to like the lady's water flask. The young engineer eating, he starts choking. I think because he put like hot sauce or something on whatever he's eating. And then what's he do? He grabs a water flask and takes a gulp. It's not even his water. He just grabs it and drinks out of it. Morrow gets frustrated because of all the bickering and everything like that. Slams his fist on the table. He's like, 2 people are dead. We've lost creature containment. And one of you. He's like, now look around. One of you is trying to destroy this ship. I want duty rosters and activity logs in my hands. In 1 hour, interviews with off-duty personnel will start immediately. From now on, we travel in pairs. Zavary, which is a new captain, and I are armed. Clem is armed. And they just are like, He's like, no one else gets a gun until I'm confident you're not trying to destroy my ship. And there's more bickering. He's like, knock it off. He's like, you want a reward? And one guy's like, yeah. He's like, give me information that leads to an arrest. I'll make sure you get an extra share. And then he walks out, and new captain's like, dismissed. So the dock lady, she grabs a water flask, but she sets it on the counter. New captain asked her in the hall, she's like, did you sabotage my ship? And she's like, no. And the captain's like, good. She's like, we need to find a way to track this thing, and I want you to come with me. So Morrow's in a monitor room. He's looking at the communication files. He starts like watching videos. And then he sees a video, or he's watching a video where he talked to the doctor guy with the beard. And he's asked like, who's he been calling? Because, there's like whatever, video logs. And he says that there's blind spots in the med bay, and he was off camera for 10 minutes. And the dude's like, well, I don't know what to tell you. He's like, your cameras suck. And then Morrow's like, if I check the pharmacy, am I going to find anything missing? And he's like, that's slander. He's like, I've been sober for a long time. And he's like, said all this stuff, whatever, like that. And there's like this like weird long pause between them. And then he's like, I just want to go home. So the older engineer is working on something. Younger guys, he's just like kind of talking and stuff like that. Then he asks the older guy, he's like, what are you going to do with your shares? And the guy's like, cause he talks about his wife was like 31 when he left. And, she looks like her grandmother now. He's like, it's not the work they pay you for. It's 65 years of your life. Then the younger guy, he's like, oh, I think I ate too much. Because he's supposed to get a wrench for the older guy because he's got like his arm. He's like, trying to fix some stuff behind a panel. He gets up and there's like this big, like from his stomach. The older guy's like, you better not throw up. And then the younger guy, he stands up. Vomits, but it's like blood, and then he like turns to the older guy, like kind of looks at his hands because they're all with blood, and then he like falls over, and I think his body like convulses a little bit. So the captain and the doctor lady, they go into the containment room. Captain's saying that they did a reading on the egg, but there's some gamma radiation, so they should be able to rig a Geiger counter to track it. But then the lady doc, she sees a broken container. She's like, oh, and the captain's like, what? And she's like, she's loose. And the captain's like, who? And she's like, the eye. So then it's like, I don't know if there's like some power failure because like the lights kind of flicker. There's like some banging around. And the captain's like, we have to go now. So then Dr. Beard, the beard guy, he calls the captain while they're still in the room, like trying to get out and make sure like nothing gets them. He calls the captain and says that he needs her in the med bay. And she's like, can it wait? And the dude's like, not if you want him to live. So the captain tells the lady they have to seal the door. They'll deal with this later. Then interview, Teng tells Morrow that he was on the bridge when the fuel pod blew. He's like, check the nav logs. And Morrow's like, nav logs could be forged. And Teng's like, sure. And some people say this is all a simulation. But that's not the conversation we're having. So he's just like so annoying. Like, what is your problem, dude? And then he's like, I've checked the feed. You're still visiting her at night, doing your filth while she sleeps. And Teng just like lets out this big sigh. How are you bypassing the keypad? Or maybe you're using events, same way you got into the containment room and set the fire. And then Teng's like, you're missing it. And he's like, tell me. And Teng's like, it's right in front of you. But you can't see it. And Morrow's like, what? He's like, just because the computer says the cryopod is full doesn't mean it is all the time. And then Morrow's like, ah. And then Tang's like, there it is. So Morrow's like, someone else is awake. Who? And then, he doesn't say anything, but then the camera switches to like a vent, like right above Tang. So someone's up there watching. So is it the saboteur? Morrow checks the feeds again. The recovered files are complete now. The Clem started the recovery process. So he starts watching video calls. He like watches a little bit, flips the next one, flips, when they're boring. He doesn't care about that. Then there's a call from Petrovich to Boy Cavalier. So this is like holy crap. So Boy's like, you pulled this off, landing the ship in my kingdom. You're about to be the richest man in whatever cousin marrying poop hole valley where you messed with Cousin. It doesn't say mess. Then the dude's like, he tells Boy Petrovich that he wants a new body. And he's like, you can do that now, right, Mr. Cavalier? Put my mind in a robot? And like Boy's like, yes, almost, or whatever. He's like, you bring me these creatures and you're going to go to the top of the list with the bullets. And then Petrovich's like, well, what if I don't survive the crash? And Boy's like, Well, that would suck for you, wouldn't it? Morrow goes to the cryo room. There's like low growling from somewhere, but he doesn't hear it. Then he sees a pod is empty. Mother's like, containment threat, medbay 1. Containment threat, medbay 1. So he leaves. He finds a new captain and the older engineer. He tells him that Petrovich is a saboteur. He's pretending to be in cryo, but he's loose. Older engineer's concerned for the younger one because he's like, I was supposed to be watching out for him. Now he won't wake up. Morrow asks the two docs, the lady and the bearded guy, what's going on. They said that they're scanning his body now. The screen says anomaly detected. Dr. Beard says that the dark spots, like that they see on the screen, like up and down his digestive tract, that they're lining the main artery. And the lady, she wants to do an upper GI scan, but the dude, beard guy, he says there's no time. He needs to open him up and stop the bleeding. And she's like, do it. And Morrow's like, what if it's contamination? She says that by the time that they put him in a cryopod and freeze him, he'll be dead. So then the doctors open up the scanning tube and take his body, put him like on the table that kind of rotates out. So lights are flickering in interrogation room with Tang. He's still sitting there. And then there's like more camera shots from above. There's like low chittering. So I don't think it's Petrovich in the vents. And then something starts dripping at his head. It's saliva. And it's so weird because he just slowly looks up while it's like dripping on his head and on his ear. And it's like about to drip in his eye as he's looking up. And then he finally reacts. And he screams because he sees the alien. He's like, ah! Which is like, yeah, weird. The young dude, his chest is opened up. And the lady's like, my God. And Beard's like, subject has 6 foreign bodies lining his esophagus. And she's like, they're ticks. Morrow tells the captain that they need to seal the room. Dr. Beard says that he's going to try to remove one. And Morrow's like, no. The other engineer dude, he's like, nobody asked you. And Beard's like, they're siphoning too much blood. Morrow tells the captain, he's like, well, you wanted to lead? Then lead. Tell him to stop. The older dude's like, look, back off. The lady's a captain. It's her call. And then the captain's like, he's only a kid. So Dr. Beard, meanwhile, while they're like arguing, he takes like a swig from a flask. And the captain asks him like, because he starts like moving, do something. She's like, what are you doing? He's like, saving his fudging life. So he has like this little like pole thing, like little handheld thing with like long prongs at the end. And he tries grabbing on one of the ticks, but it kind of like slips through because it's like really attached onto whatever inside. He finally pulls one off. And when it gets pulled off, this kind of like puff of green smoke goes up. The lady doc starts choking right away. She goes down, and then Dr. Beard, he goes down too. Kid's body convulses a little bit on the table. In the hall, the older engineer wants to go in. We're like, why? What are you going to do? Why would you want to go in there? Morrow like holds him back, and he tells the captain to seal the room. So she hits a button. This big like white smoke just like fills up the room. So now, because they're looking through this glass in the hallway, they can't see anything. The smoke stuff starts to clear, and the captain's like, "They're dead. They're all dead." And then you see like lots of ticks are just like crawling out of the kids' bodies. So there's more than 6 or whatever they said. There's just like a lot. So Clem comes up. He's like, "It got Tang." And Marlo's like, "What did?" And Clem says, "It's like, I don't know. It's something big." So Marlo's like, "Okay, we need to get to the bridge and seal ourselves in. We've got enough fuel to get us into geosynchronous orbit around Earth. Call in a cleaning team now. We just need to figure out how to shift our trajectory." So he tells the engineer dude to go to the engine room and transfer all the functions to the bridge. That he and Clem will wake up the remaining crew. He tells the captain to go with him, to go with the engineer. But she's just standing there like looking at the med bay. And then he like puts his hand on her shoulder like hard. He like whispers like, "Captain, I'm taking command of the ship. Move your ass." So then as they're going, Morrow reminds Clem to use electrical rounds because they can't afford to hurt the specimen. And Clem's like, "Hurt them?" It's like, "What about us?" Then someone pops out in the hall in front of them, starts shooting. So they duck and like return fire. Clem gets hit like in the shoulder, and like there's like blood like splatters against the wall behind him. So it's like big, powerful rounds of something. Morrow opens the door. They're right outside the containment room. So he grabs Clem to drag him in, and Clem gets shot like in the leg. Morrow, I don't know if he hit Petrovich or something like that, but he's not out yet. So maybe he nicked him. I couldn't really tell. Morrow tells Clem, he sets him down. He's like, "Hang in there." But then the door is open. Petrovich comes in, shoots him in the back of the head. So Morrow shoots back, and again he doesn't hit him. I think he hit like the wall, and maybe some debris or something hits him in the face because he's like, "Ah!" Then the eyeball creature, you see it on the move a little bit. Morrow goes out this other door. He hits like a thing, like the smoke stuff comes down in the hallway, so it kind of camouflages him, whatever, or whatever. He comes up behind Petrovich, knife blade, hand blade, whatever, stabs him and like lifts him up. And he's like, "Petrovich, right?" And the guy's like, he's like, "It doesn't matter. You can't stop it." And Morrow's like, "Stop what? What did you do?" And he's like, He's like, "They want their monsters. Here they come." Morrow pulls his hand out, just lets his blade, lets him fall to the floor. He walks away, but he leaves the containment room open, which is like ridiculous. Eyeball crawls over, like actually, I think it's almost like it crawled over the camera, and then the ticks or whatever these bigger bugs are, they start like crawling towards Clem's body. One burrows like into the wound in his head. So it's like, are all these things, when it crashed on Earth, did they contain all of them, or did they not survive the crash? Because there's like a lot of these things loose now. Captain, she's like still standing outside the med bay. She she breaks another jar with like dirt or something like that, or opens it, and she pours on her hands, and she's looking in the med bay window. Then the alien drops down behind her, and she turns and she's like face to face with it. She slowly starts reaching for her gun. It moves its tail like around her leg and like pulls it to like knock her down on her back. She manages to get up and runs, and it scrambles after her. Seems like it should be going faster, but sort of she's like running as twisting and haul, and she like tries to close the door. She's hiding behind this thing, and so she's hiding for a bit, but then she moves and the alien sees her again, so starts chasing her. She starts going down this ladder or whatever. She ends up going into the engine room. She grabs a torch from like a little drawer and tries like to seal the door. The older engineer dude, he's just standing there with his back to her, and she sees him and she's like, "Where's Morrow?" He doesn't respond. He doesn't turn around, doesn't acknowledge her. And then she's starting to like try to seal the door, and she's like, "Did you hear me? It's coming." And then he turns and he has one big eye. So the eyeball thing must have went in him. The alien in the hall like runs away for some reason. Morrow comes in through like a vent like out in the hall. Then he tries opening the door. He has to like lift it open with his one hand to pry it open. And then he sees actually like the captain's on the floor. Is the captain dead? The engineer dude is like starts standing and like staring at him, but the captain's not dead. She starts moving a little bit. So Morrow tells her to get up, and then engineer moves towards him, but then he points a gun. He's like, Then the engineer opens his mouth and is like, like these makes this noise. Behind Morrow, the alien comes in. So I was like, did it just call the alien? I was like, they're different species. So it's like, where do they stand with each other? Morrow, he sees it. He goes forward. He plows into like the engineer, kind of like knocks him down a little bit. Runs out this other door. The engineer is now being controlled by an eyeball, I'm assuming. Starts fighting with the alien. Kind of like jumps over it, like onto its back. Captain starts to wake up while this fight is going on. The engineer body like kind of bites into the alien, like in its neck or something like that, and it screams. Captain tries leaving, but the alien tail's like whipping around, so she has to be careful. And then it starts to stab the engineer in the back, and then the engineer's down. The eyeball pops out, and it tries attacking the alien. So you got to have respect for this octo eyeball thing. But it's like, is it really evil? Because it's like it tried warning the lady doc that the thing got out. I don't know. Morrow's in the cockpit that we saw before when he's talking to Mother. Captain's like outside knocking to let her in. The computer's like crew status. So he changes his hand to a torch. He starts like welding the door shut. The former new captain starts like cursing at him, whatever. He goes back to the computer. Then the captain turns, sees the alien coming. Morrow types in crew dead. She gets viciously attacked. I don't think we saw that last time. I don't remember this because she's like whipped around and just it's kind of brutal. And then Morrow like thinks about his daughter, when they're on the beach. Then we see him. We saw this before. He goes into impact room. The alien comes in, kind of drops some spit on it. A ship starts to crash. We see the building. Then it's like, okay, is that it? We've seen everything. But then it cuts to was it I forgot it. Yutani Wayland, whatever the other company. Morrow's there. So it's like, is this shortly after the crash? Because he's talking to the new Yutani leader, the granddaughter, whatever, and she's like, "Oh, I'm glad you came in." And she's like, what about the ship? Any survivors? And he's like, they were all dead before they hit the ground. And she's like, "The cargo survived?" He's like, "Yes, ma'am." So she's like, "My grandmother was very fond of you, And he's like, "I'm grateful. She had no reason to take me in. A feral boy with a palsied arm begging in the street." And Yutani's like, "She always said you were the fiercest thing she had ever seen." Morrow's like, "I told her I'd bring the specimens home, and I will. And then I'll kill the one called Cavalier." And then she's thinks about it. She's like, "He agreed to arbitration. We meet tomorrow. Maybe the lawyers can fix this." And Morrow's like, "Unless lawyers mean soldiers, we're going to have to do this my way." And then she doesn't say anything. She just like kind of walks out. But right before she like leaves the room, she says to one of her guys, "Whatever he wants, he gets." And then Cherub Rock by Smashing Pumpkins starts playing. And Morrow's just like stares out the window. And that's the end of the episode. So I wasn't a big fan of Morrow before, but I have to say, I'm a little more impressed after this, and plus the fact is, he seems like he's being such a jerk the way he's like using, who's he using? Smee? No, Slightly, and but then he knows Cavalier is a piece of crap. Cavalier basically arranged for the ship to crash into his towers. So yeah, it's a pretty clever episode the way. These revelations do kind of mean something. So that was something. Again, a little behind. You can see the next episode. We'll talk about 106 next week. Okay, with Peacemaker, Season 2, Episode 3, another Rick Up My Sleeve. That title, I'm not really sure if I understand it, but we're just going to get into it. What I will say is I didn't watch the opening this week. I was just like, I just don't want to see it. But then I did see something that the opening sequences are a little different each time. And I think it said like episode 4. So, I'm at episode 3. So I don't know what I missed or anything. But I think what it is
if there's like if there's like a different character or whatever, that they kind of highlight, or some of the dance sequences focuses on them. Because like in episode 3, Rick Flag Sr. wasn't in there, so I kind of feel like I should go back and watch this opening to see if a certain other character was in there. And who am I talking about? I'm talking about Rick Flag Jr. So Joel Killerman, is that his name? Right? It starts off 3 years ago. So Hardcourt gets out of bed. Rick Flag Jr. is lying in bed. So this must be why Hardcourt like really wasn't a Peacemaker fan in the beginning, which is really kind of weird. You think about everything. He's lying in bed, and she goes to the window. He tells her come back to bed, and she's like, well, she has to go to work, and so does he. And she says that he should go be with June, the Enchantress, and he's like, oh, are you jealous? And she's like, I'm not. And she's just like not fond of lying, and he's like, well, June, she's a fudging sorceress. And Hardcourt's like, and? He's like, and I'm afraid that if I break up with her, she's going to burrow a hole through the planet. And she's like, are you serious? Like thinking it's like all about him, ego or whatever, stuff like that. But then he's like, well, yeah. And then he's like, well, either way, I think it's worth it. Like a hole in the planet, for them to be together. And she's like, well, you're the only friend I have, and I'm pretty sure I'm the only one you have. It's like, are you really willing to mess that up? He's like, we've already messed that up. And she's like, come on. He's like, you ship out the Cordo Maltese in 2 hours. Oh, man. And then we get like some, flashbacks to, there's like explosion fighting, and then Peacemaker, what a joke. So this is right before he gets killed. This is like the last time she sees him. Then we get the show intro. So like I said, I skip. I'm going to try to go back and check that out for no reason. So then we see Peacemaker sleeping. He's like sleeping on the sofa, and his brother Keith, so he's in the other dimension. He's like kicking him, trying to wake him up. He's like, it's past 11. He's like, where the fudge you been? He's like, me and Dad have been freaked out. There's blood in the library. And, he's like, where did that come from? And Chris, Peacemaker, he's like, what library? And he's like, our library. And Chris is like, oh, I call that the trophy room. And Keith's like, since when? And he's like, where have you been? And he's like, you hungover? And he's like, a little bit. And he's like, you need to slow down. He's like, it's just alcohol, right? And he's like, yeah. And Chris struggles to sit up. He grabs his phone, and then he reads text from that world's Hardcourt. He does it like while he's peeing, and he's looking. She's saying that she's cautious, and she's like, see you tomorrow at work. But then he sees this 11:45. So he goes in a closet. He finds like this kind of flowery buttoned-up shirt. There's like a whole bunch of like some like gold chains. He puts on a couple. He's like looking for like pants. There's a bunch of like prescription drugs in the bottom of a drawer. So it's like, okay, that's probably why Keith said it's just alcohol, right? So he must have had like a drug problem. He puts on like leather pants, and he's like going to rush through the kitchen. Keith's cooking. He's like, oh, sorry, I got to go. He's like, also, why don't my clothes look like the Kardashians' furniture? And Keith's like, who are the Kardashians? And he's like, huh. He's like, wait. He's like, you seriously? So there's no Kardashians in this world. Then Keith's like, where are you going? And Chris is like, I took your advice. I'm going to see Hardcourt. And Keith's like, what about the jarhead? And Chris like, fudge him. And Keith's like, agreed. So he steps outside. Then he comes back in. He's like, hey, before I go, pop quiz. Can you name the entire address and zip code of Amelia Hardcourt's workplace? And Keith's like, what? And Chris is like, come on. It's like, this is fun. Keith's like, that's not fun. It's weird. He's like, why would I know the address of Argus? So Peacemaker's like, Argus, okay, second question. And Keith's like, well, that counts as right? Chris is like, can I borrow the keys to your truck? And Keith's like, what kind of fudging pop quiz is this? And Chris is like, I don't make the rules, bro. And he's like, it seems like you very much do. And Chris is like, just answer the question. And Keith's like, why don't you drive your fudging peace cycle? And he's like, that is the correct answer. So he like runs out, and Keith's like, WTF? So Chris goes in a garage. He's marveling over his bike. There's, big, it's gaudy as you would expect. There's like a little like metal like bike helmet. It's like a Peacemaker helmet. It goes over his face. There's even like missiles on the front, like on both sides. There's like speakers on the back sides that like pulse, whatever. People are cheering him on the street as he drives by. They're like giving him peace signs. And he stops at a stoplight. There's this kid in the backseat of the car. He's like, Peacemaker, I love you. And he starts crying, I love you. And he's like, that's a bit much. And then there's a lady on the other side of the car. She's like, Peacemaker. She pulls up her shirt and like flashes him. He's like, best dimension ever. And then the light changes. He pops a wheel, even though it's like big, huge, friggin' motorcycle, and he just takes off. Adebayo's hungover. She's on the Hardcore's couch. Adrian is like in a recliner chair, and Hardcore's like grinding coffee, and she's like in pain because her head hurts. And she asks for water, and she comments that she's like, "Oh, Chris stormed out of here last night." And Hardcore's like, "It's just Chris being Chris." And Adrian's like, he starts saying that how he knows stuff, he knows everything because him and Chris are such great friends. But then they're like, "What are you talking about?" And he's like, "Well, we're good friends, and he knows me, and like I like spiders, and and he doesn't judge me for that. He doesn't think it's weird." And he's like, "I can answer anything about spiders. Ask me." Hardcore tells she's just like whatever. She says something like John Economos fell asleep in a bathtub, and she's worried about him that he doesn't choke on his own vomit. So Adrian's like, "Why didn't you say something?" And he runs out to check him because she asks Adebayo, she's like, "Why are you encouraging him?" Because he's going on about, because she's like, "Well, what do you know? What do you know about Chris?" And so on the other world, Peacemaker arrives at Argus. He parks like on front, and I would imagine there'd be like a parking lot somewhere. He goes inside. He tells the front desk security, he's like, "I'm here to see Amelia Harcourt." The guy looks up and sees him standing. He's like, "Mr. Smith, it's great to see you." And Chris is like, "Hey, what's up, old buddy?" And he tries looking at his name tag, whatever. And the dude's like, "You keeping our country safe, huh?" And he's like, "Absolutely." And then he says something like, "How did Mr. Grant's test turn out?" And Chris is like, "Positive, right?" And the guy's like, "Oh, I was hoping it wasn't cancer." But then he asks Chris to put his right eye in front of his scanner because it's going to scan his ID. And he's like, he's a little nervous. The guy kind of frowns as he looks at the screen, and it takes a while. And then pops up Chris Smith, and he's like, "All set." So he's like, "Third floor," of course, and gives him like an ID sticker badge to put on. So the eyes match. So that's good for him. Adebayo and Harcourt talking on the roof later. Adebayo says that Chris, just said that they were on a party boat a couple weeks ago, and she kind of ghosted him after. And Hardcore's like, "I didn't ghost anyone." And Adebayo's like, "Did something happen?" And Hardcore's like, "Where?" She's like, "On the party boat." And Hardcore's like, "No ads. I told you, no." And she's like, "Well," and Hardcore's like, "Well, what?" She's like, "Why not?" Hardcore's like, "Are you kidding me?" And Adebayo's like, "No, Chris, he's nice. He's funny. He's got splendid hygiene." And Hardcore's like, "Yeah, other than the eagle poop everywhere." And Adebayo's like, "Other than that, he's super yoked, nice jawline, and he's in love with you." And Hardcore's like, "Shut up." He's like, "He's not." She's like, "He sat by your bed for 5 days while you're in a fudging coma, Em." And she's like, "He wears a fudging clown costume." She's like, "Dude." And Hardcore's like, "What?" She's like, "I'm just saying, I love you, but you're not exactly the picture of a balanced life. When I first met you, I thought you had it all together. And I'm not saying you don't come off as cool, because you do, but since really getting to know you, I realize you're more fudged up than anyone I know." And Harcourt's like, "Okay, Economos, Vigilante." And Adebayo's like, "Well, not them, but you're a fudging train wreck." And then she's like, she does something. What does she do? She's like, something like blowing up. Oh, it doesn't matter. I don't remember. But then Harcourt's like, "Okay, your point is taken, but me and Chris is not a thing. It's never going to be a thing." And she's like, "Does he know that?" At the other world, at Argus, he's on the third floor. He sees her across the room, she's standing by a cubicle, and she's like laughing and everything. Then Rick Flag Jr. comes up to him. He's like, "Hey, what's going on, Chris?" And he just muttered. He's kind of like catching off guard. He's like, "Jesus Christ!" And then Rick's like, "You got some business or something here?" And Chris is like, "What's up, Rick?" And he's like, "Just asking you." And then Harcourt comes up, and Rick says that he was just asking what he's doing here, if he's got something official or something he should be part of. And she's like, "No, Rick, it's personal." And she's like, "Oh, she shouldn't have said that, like personal." He's like, "Personal?" And she's like, "It's a friendly. Chris wanted to talk." And Rick's like, "Just wanted to talk, huh?" And Chris is like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Just wanted to talk, huh? Like about what, dude?" And Amelia. She's like, hey, Rick, will you let us talk? And he's like, yeah, of course, I'm cool. And he glares at Chris. He's walking away. So then he's like, hey, Harcourt. And she's like, oh, hey, Smith. It's like, what? We're calling each other by our last names now? So that's not something they do there, apparently. He's like, no, just being funny. And she's like, oh, hilarious. And he's like, sorry. She's like, no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bust your balls. So, hey. And she like puts out her arms kind of like for a hug. And she gives him like a long hug, like, her head on his shoulder, whatever like that. And Rick's like sitting in a cubicle glaring at them. And then Chris kind of pulls away and she like looks over and sees him. He like ducks down, whatever. She's like, oh my God. She's like, I'm so sorry. It's like, he was not supposed to be in today. And then Rick kind of like bends over, like ducks down. He's like kind of scrams behind his like big, what do you call it? It's like a big square pole, like a support pole, but it's like a big, big square. And so Chris is like, the jarhead? And she's like, I don't know why you and Keith call him that. He's Army, not Marines. So not a jarhead. And then she sees Rick like try to peek, around the pole at them. She's like, let's just go out, okay? Is that cool? And he's like, yeah, sure. They start to leave, and Rick, starts to follow them. Chris like turns back, and Rick tries ducking behind this other pole. He knocks over like a trash can, and he starts like he curses, whatever. He yells at this guy who's like in a cubicle close there. He's like, "Hey, that's not supposed to be around a corner. I told you that." So then Rick sits in like the chair, and the other guy starts picking up the trash, even though he didn't even knock it over. So they get in the elevator. It was a little quiet at first, and she's like, "I'm glad you came." And he's like, "Me too." And he's like, we're both going down at the same time. You know what they call that? And she's like, I don't. And he's like, an elevator ride. What? She like kind of snickers. She's like, is that what they call it? He's like, well, some of the kids do. What was the point of that? Or why didn't I even mention it? I'm just like, I'm confused. I feel like I missed something. In a bathroom. So Economos is sitting in a shower, or sitting in a bathtub, and Economos like sitting on a sink. And Economist is quizzing him on spiders or whatever, or tarantulas. He's like, how many eyes does a tarantula have? And Adrian's like, trick question. He's like, eyes by definition come in pairs, so 2. Then Economist looks at his phone. Tarantulas have 8 eyes. And Adrian's like, poop. And Economist's like, you said that, so confidently, I had to actually look back at my phone. Eyes don't always come in pairs. And Adrian's like, right. It's like, I forgot about Martians, one big eye. And he's like, ask me if tarantulas are furry. Economist's like, I already know they're furry and it's gross. And Adrian's like, that's a little harsh. Then he sees that, Economist sees he gets a call from Sasha Bordeaux. And he like grits his teeth. He's like, he curses. He answers like, hello. And she's like, why didn't you tell us Smith has some kind of superpowered duck? And Flory Tim Meadows is with her. And they're like in the hospital hallway. And Flory's like, a mega duck. And Economist is like, he doesn't have a superpowered duck. He's got a regular eagle. And she's like, that regular eagle just took down 5 agents. One's in the ICU. Another lost an eye. Another one needs to have reconstructive facial surgery. And he's like, fudge. She's like, okay, I'll be right in. And she's like, make it fast. So he ends the call. And Flory's like, he told me duck. She's like, what kind of man takes advantage of another man's bird blindness? And she just kind of like squints at him and walks away. Economos tells Adrian that it was work. He's got to go. And then he looks around. He's like, where are my pants? And Adrian's like, I washed and folded them and put them on the kitchen counter. And he's like, why would you do that? Harcourt or Amelia and Chris go out. They grab a couple hot dogs. They're like laughing, and at one point she like hands him like her hot dog because she has to go and pet this puppy that someone's walking, and she's giggling. So it's like so different. Then they sit on a bench, finish their hot dogs, and she's like, so you want to talk? He's like, I just wanted to see what's going on. She's like, what's that mean? He's like, like what's happening? She's like, what's happening? And Chris is like, with like you and Rick Flag or whatever. And she's like, well, I mean, he's a good guy. He's not going to, mess around on me. And Chris is like, oh. And she's like, what? He's like, oh, it's good that he doesn't do that. I've changed a lot since I last saw you. She's like, yeah, you seem less arrogant. And he's like, no. Yeah, you're right. I've actually been working on that and a lot of other stuff. And, he looks at it, it's like, what? She's like your delts? I'm just waiting for you to say, like your delts. And he's like, oh, always my delts. He's like, but seriously, like how I push people away by being a Richard, and just, trauma that I've had my whole life that I just let define me, And then, she's like looking at him. He's like, what? She's like, you really are different. And he's like, I am. She's like, last night a text, and he's like, sorry, I was a little drunk. And she's like, you think? She's like, you said you want to explore things. What did you? And he's like, mean? He's like, see if anything was there. She's like, the last thing I need is getting my heart broken again because you're curious, Chris. And he's like, right. And she's like, you really hurt me. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. And she's like, I mean, if I was ever to reconsider things, I couldn't have someone, mess around on me all the time. And he's like, oh, I wouldn't do that. And she's like, sure. He's like, no, I mean it. And she's like, and I couldn't have someone walking out on me because I was like criticizing or driving or whatever. He's like, right. That's BS. And she's like, somebody would really have to fudge and commit. And she's like, I don't know. We'd both have to think about it, He's like, yeah. She's like, the last thing I need is you being impulsive and saying you want this and then changing your mind 3 days later, Chris Smith style. He's like, okay, I'll think about it. And she's like, I mean, if all those things were in place, we could see where we were. He's like, yeah. And then there's some people like running in front of them with like backpacks and stuff. And she's like, well, I should get back, to the office. One person trips as they fall over. They blow up. The bench gets flipped back. They go flying a little bit. People are screaming, whatever. And then the other people like enter a building. I guess it's a DMV. I wasn't sure where they were. They go up. They shoot one guy because they're like, you can't come in here with the backpacks or whatever. So and then another person like shoots the ceiling. Tells everybody down. Outside, Hardcore and Chris are like trying to recover from an explosion. There's like the ringing in the ears and all that stuff. Chris helps her, and she's like, "Oh, it's the Sons." And then she's like, "They're gonna kill more people." And one yells, "We, the Sons of Liberty, are united in fighting our oppressors. They have ruled all of us under their corrupt thumb for long enough. That is why we're going to continue to destroy one governmental agency a week until our demands are met." This like police officer starts approaching, and so the guy's like on a second floor in a window, and he's like got like a knife holding a little woman hostage. He's like, "Hey, if any of you pigs come closer, I swear to God, somebody in here is gonna die." Inside, a group like moved to get things ready. They're placing these like weird looking bombs down. They have like these tubes, like some golden liquid in there. So Hardcore walks up to the officer, and he's like, "Step back, lady." And she's like, "Argus." And she shows her ID. He's like, "Sorry, ma'am." And she's like, "What do we know?" The guy's like, "A group of them went in, maybe 9 or 10, carrying bags. There could be enough sulfenolol explosive in them to blow up a whole block." And Chris is like, "Sulfenolol?" He's like, "Is that a real word?" And they're like the same thing that they used to on the Housing and Government Development Office last week. He's like, "Housing and Development?" And she's like, "Chris, I think you should stand down. I think you might be having a reaction to the explosion." He's like, "No, I got a little dizzy, it's shaking up. I'm fine." He starts to leave, and she's like, "Where are you going?" He's like, "I'll be back in a minute." So he goes in like the shop next door. It's like a pet shop, and he asks if they have access to the roof, and the shopper's like, "I need to get these the critters out of there." So then he points to the door. Chris goes up. He kind of runs for the window, and Hardcore sees him outside. She's like, "Oh my God." He like runs, jumps, crashes through a window. Downstairs, one guy's like, "Did you hear something?" And the other dude, like holding a knife, tells, he's like, "Oh, quit freaking out, whatever." And so he's gonna go check it out. And the officer tells Hardcore, he's like, "That's Peacemaker, right?" And she's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "But he's not wearing a suit." And she's like, "No." The one guy goes up to check on the noise. He sees like broken glass. Chris pops out of room, hits him in the head with an axe. The guy's like, "Wait, what happened?" And then he hits him again, like with the axe in the face. A little blood splatters on him. Police arrive. Inside they see the police and they yell like, "That's close enough." Chris charges in, grabs like the guy, slams his head against a desk, and enforces himself, like stab himself in the eye with the knife that he's holding. The lady hostage like screams. The other sons are setting bombs. They hear the scream. They're like, "What was that?" One goes to check it out, and he radios that everyone is gone. He sees a copy machine in the middle of the hallway. It starts moving, so he starts shooting at it. Then Chris, like, he's behind it, pushing it, shoves it against him, smashes him against the wall, like puts a little like hole in the wall, like through the drywall. And then he's like he gets his machine gun. He starts shooting, but Chris like holds it up so it like shoots the ceiling, and then it kind of goes off to the side, shoots like this door, and there's another son's. There's a woman back there, so she gets shot. Then Chris, he does this. He kind of jumps up and does like double kicks the guy in the face, like smashes his face. He's done. And then another's coming in to check things out. Chris grabs some pencils, and the guy like walks in, and then Chris is somehow hanging upside down. 2 pencils to the side of the face, and it kind of like lifts him up. And the guy's like shaking, like kind of shoots a little, and then he's dead. He drops him. Outside, a helicopter arrives. The sons downstairs are like, "That's our ride." So they hit the button. The bombs are all connected to this, thing in the middle, the detonator, I guess. And it starts. The countdown starts. So they go up the stairs. But Chris is there. He shoots. Shoots 4 of them. But then there's one more. He runs out of bullet. Throws a gun. Smashes the guy in the face. And then as he goes down the stairs, picks up one of their machine guns. Shoots the guy, the knocked out guy, as he walks by. He goes in the room with all the bombs, and there's like 10 seconds left. And what's he going to do? He's like, unplugs this one thing, unplugs this, like 5 seconds or whatever. And then time runs out. He just kind of like closes his eyes. It just beep, and nothing happens. And then the helicopter's like, we waited long enough. Then you see someone coming. Someone flies through the helicopter. And it's like, in flames now, explosion. It's like spinning, crashes down. Chris goes outside. He smiles at Hardcore, and she looks at him. The flying guy was Keith. He's like in this armored suit. So maybe in this world he doesn't have power. Or no, I'm trying to think when they fought. But do they fight in armored suits? Because the cop's like, he doesn't have his suit. And she's like, no. So did he have any power? He must have, because they fought in the door room place. Keith sees Chris, and he's like, you stopped the bomb? And he's like, he nods, and they like bro hug, and Harcourt runs up, hugs Chris. People are cheering, and he's like, best dimension ever. Economos arrives at Argus. Bordeaux, she's standing in the hall with Fleury and a couple of others. She's like, did you tip off Smith? And he's like, what? No. Me? No. She's like, then how did he know to have that bird in place? And Economos like, Eagle is always there. And she's like, Eagly? And he's like, yeah, read his dossier, dude. She's like, don't dude me. Your life at Argus is hanging by a thread. He's like, don't blame me. You didn't even consult me about breaking in. Blame him, pointing to Fleury. He's like, I told him about the Eagle. And Tim Meadows, Fleury, he's like, you told me it was a duck. And he's like, the fudge I did. Why would I say an eagle's a duck? And Fleury's like, it's a practical joke, trying to use my disability against me. Is it funny? Yeah, very. And whatever, kind of goes on. But then Bordeaux's like, none of this matters. She's like, what matters is a dimensional discrepancy Vega picked up at the house. He's like, after the Metropolis incident took out half the city, these types of threats are Argus' top priority. It's like, I have every agent at Northwest on the way to Smith's home now, and I brought in Red St. Weil here to assist. So he's the world's foremost eagle hunter. It's Michael Rooker. So Icono's like, eagle hunter? He's like, he's going to kill Eagly? And she's like, we can't take chances. And he's like, in what fudging country is hunting eagles even allowed? And she's like, for the next few hours. Which is like weird, like saying hours and hours. She's like, first we kill the bird, then we do our best to take Smith alive. And he's like, I'm sorry, our best? She's like, I know he's your buddy, Economos, but if he really is in possession of a dimensional portal, he's not going to see the outside of a prison for the rest of his life. She's like, are you in or not? He's like, I'm not. He's like, fudge this. She's like, then you're fired. He's like, I'm in, but I don't want to work with some piece of poop eagle hunter killer. And he's like, oh. Because she's like, he's going to kill the eagle. And he's like, and all eagles in the area. She's like, no, just the one. So he says he's not going to team up with a piece of, eagle killer. She's like, you don't have to. I'm partnering you with our new agent, Rip Jagger. And he's like, who the fudge is Rip Jagger? So she opens the back of like the whatever undercover van. Hey, fatty. It's a judo master. And he's like, fudge, because they hate him. Chris sits in the library at the house. He gets a text. It's Harcourt, Amelia. She's like, you were amazing today. It was good seeing you. And the rainbow emoji. I don't know what that. And she's like, really good. And then she's like, let me know when you've thought about what we discussed. No rush, OFC, Sparkle Heart. So he replies, like, thank you, good seeing you too. I'll let you know soon. You're the best. And he's like, got to take care of some business, so he'll be out of commission for a while. And Keith comes in, gives him a drink, asks him if everything's good. And he's like, yeah. He's like, I'm great. Keith says that Dad said he's been disappearing more than usual, so they're worried that he was taking pills again. Chris is like, no. And Keith's like, you know I love you. I always will, no matter what. It's like, you can tell me, anything that's going on. And Chris is like, I just really missed you more than you could ever know. He's like, I'm right here. It's like, I'm not going anywhere. I am now and always will be your brother. It's like, you did good today. And they, cheers, clink their glasses. Cars and vans approach Chris's, soldiers, armed soldiers. Meanwhile, he's heading back through the door room, like the in between, whatever. Flory, Bordeaux, Judah Master, the Eagle Hunter dude, they're all in the van with like Economos. There's, again, just tons of Argus guards. Chris walks through the portal into his bedroom, and that's where it ends. So they're all about to attack. Then there's the end credit scene. Economos is like sleeping in the bathtub. Adrian pulls off his pants and then like kisses him on the forehead without waking him up. And then that's where I guess where he went to wash him and whatever, fold him. That is the end of the episode. So again, it's good. It's fun, but we just get a lot of the same stuff where there's a lot of witty dialogue and stuff like that. And I get it, but it's just after a while, it's just like, okay, come on. But it's interesting to see the difference between these two worlds, because it's like, why would he want to go back to his world when he's got this other world, but it's not his world, and should he stay there? Should he come back? So that is a big dilemma. So we'll see what happens. 204 is also out, so you can watch that. We'll talk about that next week. And now the movie feature is The Long Walk. So I find this very interesting. First of all, the fact that this movie is out, I didn't even know it was coming for a while. It's like I didn't hear anything about it, and then once I was like, oh, The Long Walk. So The Long Walk, as you probably know, it was written by Richard Bachman, which is Stephen King. It was his pseudonym, and it's actually the first novel that he wrote. I think he was what did I read, that he was like still in college or something like that. But it wasn't the first one that was published. I forget. I think Carrie Carrie's his first novel published, right? The Long Walk was published later. I'm pretty sure I read it before, because I know it's in the Bachman books. There's like this big massive Bachman books. I think it's like in my garage somewhere. So I'm pretty sure I read it, because when I found out that this movie's coming out, I'm like, holy crap. It's like, wait, I think I remember that. I look at my audiobook. I've been listening to audiobooks on Audible, I think since like 2012, or maybe no longer. I think it's been a long time. Now I don't remember how long. Maybe it was 2012. I have that in my head. I've been listening to Audible for a long time. And so I look in my library, and I was like, I don't have the Bachman books. I don't have it. So I was like, maybe I never listened. Maybe I did read this, but I never listened to audio. So I use one of my credit. I'm on a one credit plan now, because that's really all I need. I used to do two. Who cares? So I was like, all right, they had it, because they didn't have the Bachman books on Audible, but they had The Long Walk separately. I'm like, okay. And it's weird, because like The Life of Chuck, that is in I'm going all over the place. I'm pretty sure The Life of Chuck is in a collection called It Bleeds, which I know I listened to. It's weird. I didn't talk about this. I don't think I did. I love Life of Chuck. I did mention that. But when I watched The Life of Chuck, I didn't remember listening to it, which is weird, because I just love that movie so much. So I started listening to The Long Walk. I was like, okay, I'm going to try to listen to this before the movie comes out. And I think it's like a 10-hour audiobook. So I started listening to like just perfectly as I drive to and from work. So it worked out. I literally finished it on the way to the movie theater Thursday.
So I had just like, like maybe 10 minutes to go. So I listened to it. And so I do think so I really like the movie. I haven't even talked about the movie yet. But yeah, let me just say again, I had no idea that this movie was coming out like more before a few weeks ago. It was just like so weird. And I part of me wonders like why wasn't this story ever made into a movie? Apparently at one point George Romero was going to do it, and then there's like the rights it happens all the times where someone gets the rights, it's in development, it sits there, nothing happens, and then the rights expire, and then someone else gets the rights, and it goes through the process all over again. But as I was listening, so what I think I really liked the movie, and at first I was like, is it because I just listened to the book? Because obviously the book has more backstory, and there are some changes from the book in the movie, and I can't I don't feel like I should talk about like differences. Part of me like doesn't even want to hint like about certain things, because if you have read the book and you plan on watching the movie, if I say, oh, this one part, this scene here, they changed this or whatever, then you're going to know that, oh, that's not going to, what happened in the book isn't going to happen, even though it's, I don't know, you get what I'm saying? So there are some differences. And so let me back up. What is A Long Walk about? Basically, what it is about is the whole story, and this is where I feel like people aren't going to be happy about this, is the book takes place in like this alternate world. It's like this dystopian world. I mean, there is a little bit at the beginning talking about how there was this war, and basically, like, the United States is kind of it's hurting. We're at financial rock bottom or something like that. So they do this long walk, and what I'm not clear, I don't know if it's every year, maybe it is, and it when I explained like with the story to the people, like the secretaries at work, they're like, oh, it's like kind of like Hunger Games, and it kind of is like that, where in the book it's like 100 teenage boys. You kind of enter this lottery for the opportunity to be in the long walk, and so in the book they select 100. They basically select 200 people. There's gonna be like 100 people who are the 100 contenders, and then there's 100 backup people in case, because once you are selected, you still have the opportunity to back out, but you have till a certain date. Once that date comes, you are not allowed to back out, and this whole thing is run by this guy, the Major. So there's these soldiers that used to do stuff, and again, it's this dystopian world where things are run a little differently. The fact that this long walk exists is like insane. So basically, you do this long walk. 100 boys are going to walk, and the last one remaining can basically, you get whatever prize you want. You can ask for anything, and it's weird because like when the Major's talking, he's saying that because they're in such hardship, that this is the opportunity to turn things around. You get crazy, whatever riches and stuff like that. But it's like, you're gonna give all these riches to one person and not everyone else. And where do these riches come from? Because, I mean, unless there's like betting going on, there's not really like sponsorship, because while these kids are walking, there's really no spectators like at the beginning. They're at the end. There's a bunch of people. How they know exactly where, they could totally, like, oh, they're gonna end up in Los Angeles, and then it's like, San Diego, and then where it happens, and it's like, oh, you missed it. Now you may wonder, like, well, how, if there's 100 kids, how does it get down to the winner? So the way it works is, in the book, you had to constantly be walking at 4 miles per hour. apparently Stephen King, he's like, my one request or requirement, whatever, is I want it to be lowered to 3 miles per hour, because he's like 4 miles per hour to maintain that. That's not as realistic. So 1 mile. I mean, there was a scene where because they get these watches that show their speed, which I don't think they had that in the book. But they at one point I think they're going like 3.4 miles per hour, and they're like, let's back it down a little bit, and they go down, and they're like, whoa, that's like a big difference, because I guess whatever, you can feel it. You're walking. The last person still walking wins, but how do you get down to one? Since you have to be walking nonstop, if you stop, I think for like 10 seconds, you get a warning. Because they basically, these soldiers are just like kind of driving alongside with them, just monitoring them. They're supposed to have all these like computers and stuff like that, like, ways they can track each person. They don't really show it so much in the movie, which I'm kind of glad they didn't, leave that kind of like vague. You get a warning. If, and again, I forget if it's like 10 seconds or whatever. If after your first warning, maybe it's a little more than 10 seconds, you still don't move or back it to your optimal speed, your 3 miles per hour or whatever, you get a second warning. And then you get a third warning. And you can wipe off a warning after an hour with no infractions. But if you have your 3 warnings and you falter again, you buy a ticket. And by buying a ticket, that means you get a bullet in the back of the head. The soldiers will literally shoot you. And that there's no warning on that. It's like, okay, you have 3 warnings, and then they're just sitting there aiming at you, waiting for you to do that. So then you got like all that stress and everything like that. It's just it's crazy. It starts to become where, I mean, imagine they end up walking like for days, and you can't sleep. You have to walk. Now they do get I don't remember so much in the book, but in the movie they had like a knapsack they could bring, some stuff. They get a canteen, and if they drink their water, they can just call out for a canteen, because they each get a number. So like canteen number 47, soldier will come give them new canteen. So you just like swap it out. They every once in a while, whatever, like once a day, twice, I don't know. I don't think they really specify that. They get like a food belt, and it has like little basically packs of whatever food. They don't really get real food, but they get like flavored whatever stuff. But other than that, you are just walking. You got to go to the bathroom, you just whip it out and start peeing and while you walk. Because if you slow down, you get a warning. If you got to poop, either you hope you don't have any warnings, you squat, or you just try to poop as you're walking. And it's kind of gross, but that's how it goes. So that's basically just the story. But as the it's in the book, you get to know the different characters, and that's what kind of, so that there's a lot of talking basically going on, and eventually some of the characters start telling their backstory type of thing or whatever like that. So it's all very interesting, and it's important because it kind of gets you to care about the characters and all that. Now, a big difference between the book and the movie is, in the movie, they start off with 50 walkers, 50 kids. And I'm like, holy crap. Because, 100 is a lot. And to cut that in half to 50 is a lot, but it feels like it's so small compared to that. Especially when you see them walking, it's like, that doesn't look like that many, but it is 50. And maybe that is a little more realistic, because if they are going to do this every year, like you're going to kill 100 kids every year, I mean, that's a lot. So they cut it down to 50. And what I was trying to, me, I'm horrible with names, but I remember some. I'm pretty sure they kind of switched some character things, like this character's backstory. Maybe they're going to eliminate this character from the movie, but they're going to give these elements of the backstory to this other character that was in the book and kind of combine and merge a little bit. Because there are lots of parts, like the dialogue is like word for word what they say in the book. And I totally appreciate that. I love when they do that. Because, yeah, whenever something is adapted, someone writes a screenplay. It's written, from the original thing. It's weird because it's basically you're just, you're not just copying it, you're tweaking it, but you're using it. So I totally appreciate when it's like, whoever wrote the original thing and wrote the dialogue and, this character says this, if you have the rights to do that and it's not going to like mess things up, I think it's great. Use that dialogue. That's what they're supposed to say. Now I know it can get tricky because then it's like written by who actually wrote it. If you're just copying stuff, you'll get the adapted from whatever book. You'll get that credit, but maybe there's a certain percentage that they can't copy or I mean reuse, repurpose, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I totally dig that. But it was kind of interesting. I'm like, wait a minute. Wasn't this character? I'm like, that character is this character. I thought this character was supposed to be this other character and do this, but it's like that character, and that was kind of good in a way because it kind of kept me on my toes a little bit. Because then when something happened, and there's a couple things. Obviously, characters are going to be dying, and it is some things are a little different the way it happens and all that. So that was good for me because if you know everything that's going to happen, I don't know why some people do that, but I kind of like it because it kept you in suspense. And there's some moments it's like holy, and like so when I'll say this, the movie's rated R. There's a lot of swearing, but there's some violence, and you don't see 49 people getting shot or whatever, but when like especially that first person gets shot, it's like you see like you see the exit, and it's kind of shocking in a way because you don't have it. And I will spoil this. Well, no, I shouldn't spoil it. But it happens a bit, and then after it happens, then you get the logo on the screen, The Long Walk. And I was like, holy crap, we went all this time. It was that long a time. But we went, a certain number of minutes. I actually looked how much time went by until we got the actual title of the movie. So that was kind of neat. But yeah, there's a lot of things that are similar. There's some things that are different. Like I said, the merging of the characters. And like there's this one character who has like tells a big their whole story. There's like it's a big part of the book where they say what there is. Not the main character or anything like that, but they totally changed the story in the movie. And looking back, I kind of maybe see why, because while the character was pretty likable in the book, what happened wasn't a super nice thing. I mean, there's some questionable whatever. The guy in the movie, I'm like, holy crap! I mean, this actor, it's I forgot the dude's name, but he was amazing, and I thought he did such a great job. It's his name was David Johnson. He was actually in, I didn't even recognize it. He was Andy in Alien Romulus. The robot or the android or whatever. So he was really good. And that's the thing. These actors, these quote unquote kids, some of them don't really look like teenage, but they do a really good job bringing these characters to life. Because I feel like that's a huge thing. Is you need to care about these. I did look at I glanced at the reviews on IMDb. I didn't read them all. Maybe it was IMDb. Was it IMDb or Rotten Tomatoes? But someone made I think it was IMDb, where they said the person said that they saw the movie with his wife and daughter. They liked it better than he did, and he was saying that like when characters started dying, he didn't care because he wasn't invested. I'm like, what? And again, then I'm thinking maybe because I read the book, I don't know, but I was starting to get emotional, and there's a couple characters like where there's like this one character is like, okay,
I know the character from the book. I know like what they do and say and everything like that. And then in one moment, you were like in the beginning, I was like, "Holy crap, this character is going to die!" And I was like, I was kind of getting a little sad. I was like, "It's going to be a sad moment when that happens," even though you have no clue when you're watching the movie if you hadn't read the book. So there's little things like that. So maybe that enhanced it a little bit for me because I knew the characters a little more. But at the same time, some of the characters were different because they were like a merge or whatever. There's also Ben Huang was in it, so he was in Karate Kid Legends. He was in American Born Chinese. He's really good too. I really like him. And the the sort of main guy in the story, Cooper Hoffman, he plays Ray Garrity. He was really good too. Another thing that's a little different. This isn't like a spoiler or anything, but Ray, since he's kind of like the focus, at least most of the story, he's his and he's the reason he's like the focus is the walks start. I feel like I'm going too long about this, but I really enjoyed this. It goes through Maine, I believe, and he's from Maine, so he's like the local boy. So when there are people, they're walking through like fields and stuff like that. So local residents are allowed to watch from the side of the road or whatever. And there's talk like later when they go through a town that his wife and his mother and his girlfriend are going to be there. So some of the other guys are mad. It's like, oh, that's not fair or whatever. But there's talk about his girlfriend. Girlfriend is mentioned in the movie, but well, I'll just say, well, I shouldn't say anything. But she's not like as big of she's hardly mentioned. And there's a reason for that. And yeah, so like I said, there's little differences. There's this one thing that's pretty big, and I was like shocked. I was like, what? I mean, I didn't say what because I'm in a movie theater, but like my jaw literally dropped. I was like, I shouldn't say anything more about this. It was really good, and after I finished, or as I was listening to the book, I'm like, this is almost not quite. It's almost kind of like Stand By Me, but a lot darker. And the movie was like an hour and 48 minutes. I feel like it could have, for me, it could have been longer. I would have been fine with it being longer to go more into the characters. And, maybe you could have had more than 50 characters. Because the fact that they like deleted some characters and merged them or whatever, there's less people to get into. But if it was, longer than 2 hours, would people want to watch like a 2.5 hour movie about a bunch of guys just walking? So maybe not. So, they had to make that decision. But I would have liked it to have been a little longer. And I did see some people that are like, oh, there's no, they need more background about the world and the dystopian whatever. But I don't know. I felt like it was fine. And yeah. There's a couple areas where they could have explained a little more, but also based on the books, like, well, the book didn't really explain it more because it kind of, I think it purposely leaves some things vague. So, oh, and then what I didn't mention, this major dude who's in charge of everything, I didn't find out about this until it might have been like Tuesday. I was like in the staff room having lunch, and I was talking to a coworker, and she's like, "Oh, I just saw an interview," and it was like, "What? That actor, Mark Hamill." I had no idea Mark Hamill was in the movie until like 2 days before I saw it. So this is the thing that kind of bothered me as I'm watching it, as like almost over. I was like, did this movie get any advertisement? Is there any promotion on this? Are people going to go see this movie? Because I feel like, nothing's been said about it. All right, so now I sometimes start with this, but I need to wrap this up because I feel like I've been going on too long. Rotten Tomatoes score right now, it is early as I record this part. Spoiler, I haven't recorded the rest of the podcast, different parts. So based off 129 reviews, critic reviews, it's at a 93%. Woo, man, that's good. That's 93%. Yeah, and I won't go through the reviews because I talked so much about this. As far as, let's see, what can I find out about the movie? I didn't look at all this stuff. It has a $20 million budget. Okay, that's cool. Oh, I should also mention what's his Judy Greer plays Ray's mom. So you get some scenes, a couple scenes with her. Let's see. I don't know. There's no box office prediction at this point, so I don't know how it's going to do. I mean, it's a $20 million budget, so that's good. But I feel like I don't know if anyone's. I don't know, because even the poster, I feel like the poster's a little. I don't know, not really generic, but I don't know if it's enticing to get people to watch it. I really hope people do go see it, because I thought it was really good, and I don't know, maybe everyone won't agree because it's just kind of basic or whatever, but it was good. So I think they did a good job. It was directed by Francis Lawrence. So Francis Lawrence, let's see, he did Constantine in 2005. Wait. Oh, I didn't realize this. He directed I Am Legend. Jeez. Water for Elephants and The Hunger Games? Really? That makes sense. Wow. Yeah, he did Hunger Games Catching Fire, Mockingjay Part 1 and 2. He did Red Sparrow. He did Slumberland, Hunger Games Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And he's also doing the Hunger Games Sunrise on the Reaping, which that was a good book. Wow. I didn't realize. So maybe with this guy directing it, maybe more people will go see. I hope people do go to see it. I had no idea. All right, so yeah, watch this movie. It's good, and I hope it is like kind of emotional for you, because I mean, if you're just like whatever, then you're cold hearted, whatever. So that is going to be it for this week. Go see The Long Walk. Big thanks to Andrew Loken. He is a big supporter of the show. You can be a supporter by going to patreon.com/gmanfromheck. Any amount you can commit to will be awesome. If you commit at the Rick Jones tier or higher, you get access to the secret podcast from Heck, which is an additional 30 minutes of podcast entertainment every single week. We are back to the Hobgoblin. We're gonna wrap it up. I'm trying to think. Like I need to start. I'm starting to condense some stuff. Like last week, I did like 2 issues in one, like an issue and a half, and I think this week I might do like another 2 issues and just kind of skim some parts, skip some stuff, and just kind of gloss over instead of going in depth like everything. So we're getting towards the end. I've done some off my mind recently, different topics. It's more podcasts, and it helps me out. It shows me that people are willing to help support the show. But if you can't commit to a monthly commitment, you can also help out by going to coffee.com/gmanfromheck, and you can buy me a virtual cup of coffee or 2. And a cup of coffee's $3. You can also go to the patreon.com/gmanfromheck, and you can buy those like Off My Mind episodes. So if you want to support and you're like, oh wait, Tony's going to talk about Wolverine is a jerk, and you can hear that, and you can pay $3, which is again less than the price of a cup of coffee, right? So anything you can do will help support and just show me that you care and justify different costs that I have and all that. But let's move on. So what about next week? Next week, I don't know if it's your typical podcast movie, and when I say that, I'm not trying to insult you that you only care about certain things, but it might be maybe an insult to me, because there's some things where it's like, I don't know if there's much to talk about this, but it's a big, bold, beautiful journey. I'm actually really interested in this. It's Colin Farrell and Margot Robbie, two great actors, right? And I don't know much of the backstory about this. I feel like it's based off a book. It might be. I think I may have heard that. I could be wrong. But basically,
there's like this door in the middle of nowhere. They go through it, and the doors are they go into different memories. So they go in each other's memories and relive stuff. And because like in a trailer, there's one, he's like, whoa, and she's like, what? He's like, that's high school and everything. And she's like, all right, let's go. He's like, wait, whoa, but it's, because he's a little hesitant to go back to high school, and it looks like it could be a cool movie. I'm really interested in that. And then we'll do more of the shows. We're there's still got episodes of Peacemaker, Alien Earth, Twisted Metal, Dexter Resurrection, and I feel completely horrible, like a failure that I just wasn't able to get to Wednesday. Things are just so crazy. It's like I have no time. I keep getting pulled in different directions, and it's like, yeah, whatever. You don't need to hear that. So I hope you are doing well. I hope you are finding time to do the things that you want to do. I hope you're taking care of yourself. And I hope you remember, be good to each other.